Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to episode something 295. Let's get started. Tesla stock is up today, 6-7%. Overall markets are flat except for Nasdaq. Dow Jones down 0.3%, Nasdaq up 1%, S&P 500 up 0.4%. Still volatile, and Russell 2000 down 0.2%. The markets are Nasdaq is really carrying everything right now, and it's really just a handful of stocks: Tesla, Nvidia, and other chip stocks. Palantir, most of the retail shareholder darlings are carrying the market today. Retail investors are buying the dip again. Nvidia is up 6%, Tesla is up 7%, Palantir is up 7%, AMD, Broadcom up 3%, Meta up 2%, TSM up 4%. Walmart is down too. Walmart has dropped from more than $100 per share to now $85 per share. So that's a very dramatic 15% drop in a matter of 2 weeks for a company like Walmart. I mean, obviously Walmart is not like Tesla. So Tesla is driven mostly by coal production, delta changes. Treasury yields are up a couple of basis points despite today's CPI data. The inflation data came in slightly lower than expected at 0.2% as opposed to 0.3% expected. And a bit of a reversal from last month's massive jump around 0.5, 0.4%. But if you look a little deeper into inflation numbers, the inflation, especially core inflation, is still persistent. And I don't expect that to change in the near term. Especially with tariff wars, it's going to be very difficult to bring that down. And I think the Fed is taking note of that as well. All right, let's read through our Reuters article of the day. S&P 500, NASDAQ gain on cooling inflation, tariffs took slowdown fears. The benchmark S&P 500 and NASDAQ rose on Wednesday following data that showed slowing U.S. inflation. Although concerns about economic fallout of President Donald Trump's trade policies persisted, a Labor Department report showed consumer price increased less than expected in February, but the improvement is likely to be temporary, given the backdrop of aggressive import tariffs. Get a look. This CPI is good news on the inflation front, but obviously, with the imposition of tariffs, we still don't know where the real direction of the inflation is at this time, said Peter Cordillo, chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities. Traders held on bets that the Fed will proceed with the 25 basis point interest rate cut in June, according to data compiled by LSEG. The central bank is widely expected to maintain current borrowing rates at its meeting next week. Rate-sensitive banks such as Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs gained 2% and 1% respectively, with the growth stocks also rising. Tesla surged 7%, Nvidia climbed 6%, lifting the broader chip index by 3%. Trump's 25% protectionist tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports kicked in on Wednesday, drew and are likely to include copper. Interesting. Trump's 25% protectionist tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports kicked in on Wednesday and are likely to include copper. This is really interesting because I saw a tweet yesterday that said something like, Trump is making it cheaper to import refrigerator, which is, stainless steel, than import steel and manufacture the refrigerator here, which is stunning. I mean, that is crazy. So I think a lot of these protectionist populist policies are really just that. They're just there to gather votes, protect a favored small group of people, companies maybe, but the overall impact is much, much worse than people realize. That's one of the reasons I'm short mini stocks. The U.S. president's trade restrictions drew swift retaliation from Canada and the European Commission. Companies that integrate steel and aluminum within their supply chain, such as Ford, GM, fell 2% each, while Honeywell dropped 1% and Deere declined 1.5%. Dow Jones fell 105 points, etc. etc. We talked about that. Tech stocks led sectoral gains with a 2% rise. We talked about that. Financial markets have been roiled by Trump's unpredictable tariff maneuvers, with analysts cautioning about potential capital outflows from Wall Street. Concerns are mounting that the new US tariffs could stoke domestic inflation and possibly trigger a recession. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are coming around to the idea now that the recession is pending, which is what we've been discussing for the last several months. I heard yesterday the former US Treasury Secretary, what's his face, the Harvard guy. I forget his name right now, but he was talking about how he sees the recession probability a little less than 50%. And today, Mohammed Al-Arian, co-founder of bond firm PIMCO, saying something like he's raising his forecast of a recession to about 30%. And I think these folks are being a bit more kind of cautious about the recession probabilities. I think there's this, I mean, it is a fact that if the talk of recession increase, then it also increases the probability of a recession happening. So it can be kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think a lot of people are just being a little more cautious than they really think privately. So for me, it's pretty obvious that recession started. Tech-heavy Nasdaq recently entered correction territory, while the S&P 500 narrowly avoided confirming 10% drop. The uncertainty has prompted businesses to dial back on investments and revise their forecast downward. Delta, Kohl's, and Walmart are among the latest companies to announce forecast adjustments. Goldman Sachs became the first brokerage to lower its 2025 end target for benchmark index, while JP Morgan sees an increased chance of a U.S. economy entering a recession. There you go. Intel jumped 6% after reports that TSMC had pitched NVIDIA and AMD and Broadcom about taking a stake in a joint venture to operate the U.S. chip company's factories. Pepsi fell 2% after broker Jefferies downgraded its rating on the stock. A debate on the stopgap bill in the U.S. Senate was also in focus. Yeah. Advanced issues outnumbered decliners by 1.3 to 1 on the NYSE and 1.4 to 1 on the NASDAQ. So most of the companies, a majority of the companies are declining today, despite the companies. It's really, like I said, a few handful of stocks. Retail shareholders are buying the dip again. We've seen this a couple of times in the last 6 weeks or so. And it's going to result in the same way. It's going to result in another leg down, and it's going to be even bigger than the last one, in my opinion. But who knows? I might be wrong. I've been wrong before. Actually, I should change the name of this space again to Tesla will triple in 2022 to remind myself that I can be wrong. All right. Today we had the Algoma Steel CEO. Algoma Steel CEO on CNBC. This was about an hour ago, published on YouTube. And it's a 6-minute video. And the CEO is talking about the insane uncertainty right now. The absolutely absurd uncertainty around tariff policy. And that the tariffs that they're planning for change 3 times in a matter of 1 day, and how that makes it so difficult. So CNBC folks had the CEO come up and talk about how it's so difficult to plan around. I mean, they had the meeting, executive meeting, when they first thought it was 25%, and they changed to 50%, and they changed back to 25% in real time, live as they're having the meeting. And he says that the what they should do is changes a lot, whether it's 0%, 25%, or 50%. So they couldn't make a decision, so they just paused shipments. And it kind of just goes to show how, like, even the companies that Trump is, supposedly trying to protect, can't plan around these tariff talks. So I think the economy is coming to almost a standstill at this point, like a declining below a stall speed. So it's not good for anybody, even the companies that Trump is trying to protect. Bank of America Institute representative was on CNBC, I think yesterday, talking about consumer spending, and she talked about how for the first time since the founding of the institute, which I'm guessing is like a research arm, and but I don't know when they were founded, so I'm guessing in the last couple of years. For the first time since this founding, the lower income folks saw their incomes decline. So in the last couple of years, we've seen lower wage earners. I think a lot of them are kind of waitresses. I mean, waiters, waitresses, kind of like restaurant workers, hotel workers, and basically minimum wage or just above earners. They had their wage growth above inflation growth, meaning they had real wage growth. So wage growth in real terms. And I think that's finally changing. And that's because, as I mentioned in the last few months here, consumers are running out of money, especially folks like millennials in their 20s. Or, I think millennials are Gen X, I'm guessing. So Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, and a couple of generations below that are really hurting. So people in their 20s and 30s, really, really hurting. Folks above 50 are doing better. These are folks who have 401k balances, so they saw their 401k balance increase in the last couple of years. These are folks who have paid down or off their mortgages already, so they're not being impacted by rising rates. They have their cars, they have their houses. They're not being impacted as much from rising interest rates or high interest rates. So there's a huge bifurcation going on in the economy right now. Baby boomers love to travel, but I think now the weakness is kind of spreading across the economy across the world. So that's why I think we're seeing another level of weakness across the economy and the stock markets. One more thing to point out is the CPI came in lower than expected today, but it's still very high. So the Fed is not going to cut next week, and I don't think they're going to cut in May meeting either, and possibly June meeting. I think if there's a cut, it might wait until the second half of this year. And so I would sell the rips. Today it's up 6%. I think it's up about 15% from the lows that we saw before Trump decided to favor one company over the rest of the country and had an infomercial in front of the White House, which kind of stunning to see. I don't even know if it's legal, but I think we've passed that after the meme coin pump. I think it's kind of gloves are off, wild west in the markets at this point. Lucia, how are you?
What's up, Yaman? All good, thank you.
What's going on?
Hey, Yaman, how you doing? I heard you talking about the is it legal debate about Tesla at the White House. I'm curious how you feel about when Biden drove Jeeps at the White House.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, why? Like, I don't listen. I wasn't a fan of Biden. I'm not a fan of Trump. In fact, I voted for Trump. Kind of shut my eyes, put my one eye, my left hand over my eyes, and just like push Republican or something. And but I thought that I'm always been against raising tariffs. Even in 2016, that was one of the main reasons why I voted for Hillary Clinton, is because Trump was kind of going on and on about tariffs. Then he came to power in 2016, and I thought, well, some of the things that he's saying actually make sense. So I came around a little bit, but what he's doing in the last month or two, it just doesn't help anybody. You know, what do you think?
Well, I mean, logically, if we look at what he's actually done, he hasn't actually followed through on any of the tariffs for too long of a period of time yet. Um, the date's always been out into the future. So it feels like it's a negotiation tactic, but sometimes you do have to actually raise the tariffs if that's going to be the constant tactic you use. I agree with you. I don't agree with the tactic. In reality, I think it's a silly thing to do. I think his attempts to annex other countries is kind of silly and probably going to like hurt rather than help in the long term.
But we
But
have a situation right now that he's made it more expensive to import steel and manufacture refrigerator here than just import the refrigerator. So how is
yeah,
that protecting manufacturers in this country?
I
And he's
agree.
raised input prices of steel and aluminum and now copper on all manufacturers across the country, which is asinine. I mean, I think I heard something like there are 30 times more employees dependent on these input prices than the number of employees are protected in these companies.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the people that are advising him or him himself aren't understanding the fact that like raw mineral input imports are not the same as finished product imports. And that's the core issue, right? Because like for example, Canadian potash is an excellent example of if we don't import potash, we don't produce food. If we don't produce food, not only do we not have it for internal consumption, we don't have it for external export. So I completely agree with you. Like raw minerals is such a different thing than finished products because when the finished products arrive, we're just consuming it. We're not potentially exporting it. So I also
Yeah,
don't believe that you need to have export balance with every country, right? Like that's like Tesla saying they need an import export balance with all of their suppliers. It's like, well, you're not buying enough cars. I'm going to stop buying batteries from you. That's stupid. You have to buy the batteries to sell to other people, right? Like it's just how things work. Um, and potash is physically located in particular parts of the world. It just is what it is.
yeah. Also, when I listen to Lutnick and Peter, whatever his last name is, Narabo or something, when I listen to them, their logic, like they don't make any sense on these interviews. I think they're either, I can imagine they're not very smart people. I think they're all very smart people. I think they're trying to push a narrative, but the narrative they're trying to push is just not defensible. So they're kind of
Yeah.
fumbling on these interviews.
I think that's this unrealistic belief that Canada would ever join the US through this tactic. I think realistically, if they wanted them to join, there's a completely other tactic they could have used. For example, in the early 90s, in or sorry, late 90s, early 2000s, Canada actually had a political party called the Alliance Party. It was actually a party running in Canada. I think this is like George Bush time, right? So they're running in Canada, and their whole thing was if they got elected, they would start talks to merge with the United States. So it's not that long ago that there was Canadian support for one of the like four major parties that was getting lots of votes. So the notion isn't like completely unpalatable, at least at some point in time. But the approach being taken now, if anything, is having the opposite effect. I think he's trying to go for some kind of legacy, right? Like if you get the Panama Canal, you get if you get Greenland, you get Canada or something like big like that, then he has a huge legacy. I wonder if that's what it is.
He's burning a lot of bridges that are not going to be rebuilt for decades to come if he doesn't reverse ASAP.
I
Um,
mean, he did reverse. Like if
mm,
you look at it with Ontario, they backed off on the electricity export tax thing. I don't know. I agree with you. He's burning bridges. He's burning bridges, but a little bit of that is showmanship. I hate to say it. It's just like, look, I'm tough. But you could also look at it. Okay, I'm playing devil's advocate. I just want to be very clear. You know I do this. By looking like he's tough on Canada and on Mexico, people can't just call him a racist when he's being tough on Mexico about drugs. And I think that I support the tariffs on Mexico personally, not because there's not a huge dependency on the food and all of this stuff, but like I don't know. There is a lot of crime happening in Mexico. If the border crisis is so bad because people's perception is that Mexico isn't a safe place for people to live, then something needs to change. Arresting cartels might be a start.
Okay. What do you think about his infomercial in front of the White House? Do you think that's a net positive or net negative for Tesla sales in 2025?
I think it's a net positive.
Okay, can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more people out there that were never Tesla. Like they would never look at an EV. They think that they're not good. They're not manly. They're not tough cars. And there's a lot of people out there that are super pro-American, but they don't go out and do their research necessarily. And then there's that last bucket, a huge bucket of people that just support Trump, really, really support Trump and America, however you want to like put that, right? Like I don't think people who support America have to support Trump. I'm just saying, like, but there are people who blindly support Trump and and support America, and that intersection is pretty high. And I think those people might literally feel offended when they start to learn about like somebody's going into places and stealing tires, people are spray painting cars, they're whatever. And there is a lot of Americans out there that will say, "Ah, fuck that person. I'm going to go support this." And there is a bit of that American attitude.
So let's put numbers around it. So rewind to I think this happened today, yesterday, right? The infomercial happened yesterday, right?
Yes.
Okay. So rewind to Monday when the stock was down 15% or so. And let's assume that the deliveries, I think deliveries estimate for Q1 was around 360,000 at that point by per call sheet. And then the
Sure.
infomercial happens on Tuesday. What do you think the net impact on Q1 deliveries and then 2025 deliveries is?
That's outside my realm of expertise, as you know, but like the Google Trend like data that Sawyer shared, I think is very promising. People are searching how to buy Teslas. People are looking up Tesla prices. I looked at that one as well. You don't look up Tesla price necessarily to sell. You look it up mostly, I think, to buy. We saw it after the Super Bowl as well. I also think a lot of the delivery numbers are suppressed because of a number of other factors. Uh, High interest rates, perception of the economy, uh, the fear about electric vehicles, the theoretical thought that there would be cheaper other cars and alternatives. Maybe people are waiting for those kinds of things. But I think the biggest factors for me personally that maybe you agree with or disagree with is the economy and the perceptions around it. And then the second one, sadly, is just people not understanding that it's an option, that it's American, all these kinds of things. It just wasn't in people's minds. So I think those two things move with this, right? Like the economy, CPI print, it was positive. Interest rates could come down sooner than people think. All those things can change things. Oh, and then the other big part is, they're switching the lineup, right? So as they make new upgrades to the car, I think it'll be good. But like, I honestly think Tesla doesn't have to keep making new cars. I think they can just continue the Kaizen approach of making the car better, and people get used to it.
You I just let me push back one more time. Do you mind putting like specific numbers around the net impact on Q1 deliveries and 2025 deliveries?
I, it's difficult for me to say how much of an impact it would have on deliveries without CPI coming down. Like I think interest rate is a bigger bearing on the decision than anything else. If I was going to say what percentage of Americans are now going to consider a Tesla that wouldn't have considered it before, that I think is a number we could put. So okay, let's try and work our way from there. Let's say about 50% of Americans are Republican. Out of them, maybe let's say 20% of that are like staunch Republicans. Like they would go out of their way to really, even to look into this. Out of that percentage, maybe, 10% are in the market to buy a car right now. So you're looking at 2% of 50%. So you're looking at roughly 1% of America. That's still a very large number of people that would then give serious consideration to a Tesla. And then what percentage of that actually converts? I don't know, 25%, a quarter percent of the United States. That'd be a huge number of new buyers. Obviously, you'd have to divide by families and things like that.
So any way you look at it, that's tens of millions of people potentially interested that weren't interested before.
Okay. Interesting. Luce, then Grant.
So to answer, to speak with Meta. So back in the day, people was lamenting the fact that Musk doesn't tweet enough about Tesla. And the reason was very simple. It's because he was politically affiliated with Trump at that time. And he didn't want the Tesla brand being correlated to Trump. Now that Trump has been elected, it's very clear that Tesla and Trump has been correlated strongly, and there is a lot of people that are trying to
Luce, please
sabotage.
keep it short.
Yeah, so basically, Elon Musk went all in with the Republicans.
Okay, thank you. Grant?
Yeah, I think that there'll be a near-term bump in the US from this move, but I think it's worth noting that there's going to be even more of a drop in demand in Europe because of it. I mean, Europeans are already not really buying as many as they used to, and I think that this move and this even closer affiliation of Trump and Elon is going to hurt sales there even more. I honestly think more than they benefit from the bump domestically.
I would
think,
say
let me just add one more thing to that. Dan Ives, who has been on every network you can imagine, CNBC, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, and literally anybody's anybody. Like, I think he went on the FIFA channel pumping Tesla stock every single day for the last 3 months. I mean, the guy is relentless as the stock went down more than 50%. He went on today, I think Bloomberg, and he was kind of blasted, like, just like anchor after anchor, kind of reminding him of his quotes in the last few months here. And he said that the net impact of Trump's endorsement is actually negative, and I agree,
yeah, but
because
he's talking about
it
tariffs.
actually
Or is he talking about Tesla?
Trump's the infomercial, Trump infomercial in front of the White House by the United States president of one company over the others, and he said this is a net negative, and I agree because it actually polarizes the public more and makes Tesla about politics even more so than before. So, and there's so many other reasons why I think that is the case. But let's go to Meta. Did you have something to add? And then go to
Yeah, I would speak to like Grant's point. So two things to think about. One is theory of mind, and then the other one is the numbers you're talking about with Europe. I think there's only so much of a well to draw from people who have so much visceral hate that it changes their buying decisions. 90% of people out there, in my opinion, don't make their buying decisions based on politics. They make their buying decisions based on numbers, based on what's in their mind at the time. Like, so state of mind, I will agree. Like, just the name being mentioned in a positive or negative context often helps. There is no such thing as bad publicity as a saying for a reason. The second piece is when people go out and they plan what to do, most people plan like where they want to go on vacation, they're looking forward to it. What car they want to buy, they're looking forward to it. What thing they want to do, it's positive, right? So the positive theory of mind benefits far more, in my opinion, than the negative theory of mind. And to just put it out there, there's a study that was done on all the laundry detergents that were doing competitive ads against Tide. And what they found was Tide sales went up, not down. Shitting on Tide helped Tide because it didn't hurt as much as it helped. That's just the reality. Like, people who don't go to the store and say, I don't want to buy Tide, what should I buy? They were like, I want to go buy something. And then Tide was in their mind. And then there was the other things like, there's so many other things competing against Tide. I'll just get Tide. At best, it's the second best.
I mean, it's funny you said that because this morning I almost tweeted something like, and no offense, but I almost posted something like, if you think the Tesla takedown protests are helping, Tesla's visibility or marketing, you're out of your mind. But I didn't because I didn't want to offend anybody. Grant?
Yeah, I feel like there's always a counter argument from the bulls around why this is all actually good, and it's on its face just not good in my mind. Like, that always drives me a little crazy. When it comes to people buying based on the owners of the business and their allegiance with the views of those people, I also think that it's a consistent talking point that people don't do that, or that doesn't make sense from the bulls, which I kind of understand. I don't personally do a lot of that myself, but I also would challenge the idea that, this particular moment, this particular person is having a much bigger impact on the lives of people than, Chick-fil-A deciding to donate to pro-Christian groups that were gay marriage. Like, if you're European right now, your country is likely scrambling to accelerate defense spending because there's a war in Europe that the guy who is behind this car company, kind of got this guy in office who's pulling back on defense spending, pulling out of international alliances, and kind of leaving the European country, Ukraine, flapping in the breeze. Like, there's not an example I can think of, and I would be open to hearing otherwise, Meta, of a particular founder of a business who has done things that have actually impacted anyone's lives more than there is in this particular case. So while there are some people who won't buy
Okay,
a
Grant,
car
thank you.
on that
Meta?
basis, sure.
So I hate reasoning this line of reasoning. If it can't point to it in the past, it can't be possible in the future. No one has ever landed rockets that were reusable. That's not a reason to try. So let's just throw that line of reasoning out the door. The other thing I would say is every time we say something like people in Europe won't do this, people in Europe won't do that, I say look at the Google Trends. Like, there's easy data to go look at. I just went and looked it up while you were talking. The search volume for Tesla price is double in Europe as of today than it has been for the last 12 months. So Europeans are looking up Tesla price more, not less, after this. I'll take a screenshot and post it.
Okay. Bull 2035.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out with sales. So a lot of speculation we'll find out. But my question for Meta is, do you think this is going to change the offerings Tesla has in terms of vehicles? Trumpers like trucks. Cybertruck is a joke. Is this going to change what they're doing at Tesla?
Marketing is all about perception. As soon as you get the Sean Hannitys, the Joe Rogans, all these people that people look up to talking about something positively, it shifts people's minds. There was a period of time in American culture where blondes were the popular thing. Then it was brunettes. Then it was whatever. The most popular thing shifts. You see this with fashion all the time. I remember one of my friends who was in fashion, they were talking about how did you get people to start wearing like horns or feathers or spiky things or sequences? And what they do is they have a runway and they have somebody go on the runway with an obnoxiously extreme version of what they're trying to sell. Somebody go on the runway with head to toe sparkles and they'll be like, that's crazy. I would never wear that. But then they go to the store and they see something that's not as extreme, but it is there. And then they buy it and trends change. Trends continue to change. That's an extreme form of marketing, but it's anchoring. A similar thing happens with the truck. When only a few people have the truck, it seems extreme. As more people buy the truck, as you see more of your fans buying the truck, suddenly it's just as normal. Like, people used to think Priuses look weird.
Meta,
Now
what do
they
you
don't.
think, before I go to Teflon, what do you think is the probability that Tesla ends the Cybertruck line?
Zero.
Zero.
Well, okay, not zero. Given time, like in a century, sure.
No, no.
You're talking like in the next year or two, zero.
Yeah, in the next couple of years.
Zero. Elon's namesake is attached to that truck. There's no way he would cancel it at this point. And it is popular enough.
Can you define popular enough?
There are venture capitalists buying the truck and donating it as a police car to the Las Vegas police.
That's like
That
5
is
trucks.
popular. No, that's not the point. I'm saying it's popular. It's popular enough
How
for
many
enough people
venture
to buy and
capitalists?
push.
How many venture capitalists have done that?
Your mind is too small here. Your
Yeah, okay.
pendulum swings back
So
and forth,
that's
back and
your
forth. You're on the
is that your
extreme.
definition of enough? popular enough that one venture capital
No,
bought.
no. You if you want to focus on the tiny little thing, I get that you have to use tweezers, and so you're really focused on using tiny things. But right now, focus on the full picture, not just the one thing I said. I give you lots of examples of news anchors, media personalities who are leaning into it, and you just focused on one example.
Those are not Cybertruck. They bought Model S.
Okay, do you think when there was this guy in Spaces a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how Model 3 will help the Model S sales. Do you think that guy was wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that guy probably shouldn't have run a space telling people it was going to happen then.
Yeah. Yeah, should enough.
But the
But
data
that doesn't
actually
answer the
spoke
question.
truth to
So
what he
you
said at the
said,
time.
so I'm
Model S sales
looking,
did
so
go up.
what I'm noticing is that you have a bit of a lack of willingness to put numbers around what you're saying. So you refuse to put number around the previous topic,
No,
which is
I have a
net
willingness to
benefit,
put numbers on what I
and
say in other spaces.
you're not willing to put a number. What is popular enough for in terms of production and sales numbers?
You and I both know there's a reason why I'm not going to say numbers, dates, or timelines.
No, we're not going to have a coffee bet. But what is popular enough? Because in my mind, popular enough is contribution margin positive, and that's not the case with Cybertruck.
Your definition here is biased. A vehicle can be a loss leader for a company to make sales in other vehicles. You're aware of that. Many car companies do that.
Not at a high volume.
Okay, so did you just change that from they're going to cancel the truck to they're going to cancel it at high volume? They could run it at a Model S or X volume for a very long time. That's not what we're talking about.
That's not enough for Cybertruck.
Why is that not enough? Okay, so if your definition, you just said they're going to cancel the truck. If they make 10,000 a year, did they cancel the truck? Yes or no?
I think so.
Okay, so your definition of making 10,000 trucks a year is canceling the truck. I just want to make that clear.
No. If 10,000 is the annual demand level for Cybertruck, then Tesla would cancel it altogether.
Oh, yeah, but we're disagreeing on that. I'm saying if they even hard-headedly decide they're going to still make those 10,000, this is a fictitious situation we're talking about. Your definition would be wrong, right? You would admit that if Elon was stubborn enough to continue to make the truck, just because 10,000 people wanted it, it may not be the best financial decision, in your opinion, but it still wouldn't be canceled.
I don't think Elon would do it. I think Elon would cancel it. But yeah, I would be wrong. If Elon kept going it at 10,000 a year, I would be wrong.
So why do they keep making the Model S and X?
Because Model S and X isn't as costly to produce as Cybertruck.
Yeah, I think you're too narrow in your comparison here. Cost can be brought down. If you're not trying to make a high volume, if you're not trying to make the vehicle in a high volume format, you can bring the cost down.
Okay, Grant?
Yeah, I think zooming out, what's going on here, in my view, is the same thing that always goes on, which is things go poorly and the bar is continuously lowered by bulls. Meta, at a point, referenced the possibility of Cybertruck being a loss leader. We're talking about what happens at 10,000 production volumes. It's a failed product, but he probably won't admit that.
I feel like I'm on stage with like the Micro Penis Club. Why are you looking at one example? I gave lots of examples. And then I engaged in a hypothetical debate. And I repeatedly said, Grant, in that hypothetical debate, I repeatedly said, this is not going to happen. This is an extreme example. And now you're saying that I'm admitting it. That's so ridiculous. This is copium from a bear who's projecting it onto someone you call a bull. And I hate that label because I was selling Tesla. I posted when I bought Tesla recently. Okay, stock went up. I was right. I'm sorry you were wrong. Cope with it.
We're going to go to Magic. Magic, let's break up this one-on-one.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I mean, kind of gonna I don't want to echo what Grant's saying, but yeah, I mean, Meta, look, I mean, I feel sorry for anybody that's been long-term bullish for the company. We gotta, even as bears, we gotta give them a little break. Come on, Grant, just
that 54% return this last trade I made. Oh my God, I'm crying about it.
They're not doing well, so I won't pile on right now. Please, I mean, all the bears are begging for you to put money on the table, dude. Please, for the love of God, put money on the table. That's all we want. So I'll kick it off to Grant.
No. I'm deciding who's to get to speak. Teflon Do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, Kimchi Bader.
Hey guys, I just wanted to. I mean, I think it's absolutely nuts that even someone like Grant would act like Trump, a guy who reads printed out emails, who got into a Model S yesterday and said it is so computer, would Bennett, and who hates EVs, would add any real bump in sales. I'd argue that turned away 3 potential buyers for any potential conservative person who might throw 50K at a Tesla, because he loves Trump. But the other thing I wanted to mention is when Meta mentioned Tesla price in Europe going up, he mentioned that as if it was a positive. Do you actually think people are wondering how much Tesla cars cost, or are they just checking how much Tesla stock is going down because demand is cratering in Europe? It just seemed like a weird comment to think people Googling Tesla's stock price was a positive.
Okay, so putting a 5 more minute time limit. We're going to go around one more time, and then we're going to switch topic. I got to ask a couple of questions on AI for Meta. Let's go to Meta.
I would love to put the challenge back on the people who are on the other side to ask, how do you want to ground it in numbers? Let's come up with search terms. Let's come up with areas and regions that would demonstrate one way or the other, so people aren't just saying this again in 2 weeks, whether they're right or wrong. So if you think it's going to be 3 times the people are going to get turned off than turned on, let's figure out the search term in the region where we're going to see that. Find the blue states, find the most liberal leaning countries, and demonstrate that. Use Tesla car sale numbers or search terms. What is the closest leading indicator you guys can come up with?
Okay, we're going to go to Kimchi Bader. And before that, Kimchi Bader, I just learned about kimchi, what that is. And is apparently good for you, but it sinks your refrigerator. It's crazy. And I'm eating it right now. Kimchi Bader, go ahead. Kimchi Bader doesn't want to speak. Let's go to Magic, then Grant, then we're going to switch topics.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's been some clear brand destruction. It's hard to measure what the extent of the brand destruction is. For me, this seems like a foolish move. I mean, everybody knows that, liberals buy electric vehicles a lot at a much higher pace. I don't see conservatives buying it. It seems like they're neglecting their core base to try to sell to a very small niche market. The same thing that happened kind of with Bud Light is how many transgenders really buy Bud Light. I mean, you lost a lot more of your core customers by doing that than you did include other customers. So that's what I see the situation here. It's very similar. It's similar of just like going after a really small market but losing your core market at the attempt.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the case in my mind. But Grant,
Yeah, putting it very simply, pick a metric, any metric. 2024 deliveries, 2025 deliveries, Cybertruck deliveries over those periods. Every one of those numbers is dramatically below the expectations of bulls 1 year ago, 2 years ago. They keep going down. They keep failing to meet even low expectations, and the Bears have been winning. It's very simple. No amount of cope, no amount of stories around. Oh, a VC bought some for a police unit. It just doesn't matter. You've been wrong. It's very simple.
okay. Now I'm going to move down a few other people, and then we're going to focus on Meta. And then let me just give a word to Meta, then Bradford, and then we're going to switch to AI. Meta, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Magic and Grant, you guys really should take what you say sometimes, switch bull and bear, and see if it resonates equally, because it's really funny just to hear it sometimes. As somebody who's trying to be neutral, when you say pick a metric, any metric, and then you name past metrics, and then you talk about the future, it's as ironic as when people would say, selling Kindles at a loss is a silly thing. Amazon's AWS is a silly thing. It's just losing money. AirPods are never going to be successful. They're ugly product. Nobody wants an iPad. It's just a larger iPhone. This is a repeated storyline. That's not a thing that one should lean into. And then just the last piece there, I'll say when, not Grant, the other gentleman that was up here, I forgot his name right now. He said something to the effect of, It's very clear there's been brand damage, but it's hard to measure. That is the definition of coping. If you can't measure it, it's not clear. You could say, I believe, but it's not clear.
Okay. Bradford?
So I had a thought that might be a little bit interesting. We know that Tesla sales are going to decline this quarter. But Trump had the whole thing at the White House. I think that makes the optics around the declining sales this quarter worse, even though the appearance may have caused some kind of pickup in sales.
Okay, thank you, Bradford. All right, let's switch to AI a little bit. Meta, any updated thoughts on Grok 3 or GPT 4.5 or the recent announcement by Google?
Yeah, the Gemma model is continuing that trend. If you look at the graph, the thing to look at, it's kind of telling they didn't add Grok 3. In all honesty, they should add Grok 3, would have been on the far left on that graph. They compared to DeepSeek R1 and
Yeah, why didn't they add Grok 3 over there?
marketing. They should have added Grok 3, right? Actually, you could argue the only model they included in there was O3 Mini, which in theory is a small model. Grok is a large model. So there's two ways you could. Okay, I'll devil's advocate back away from what I just said. What they included in that graph was either small models or open source models, and R1 being the only large open source model. I guess that's fair to include R1, but not the others. Gemma is outperforming all the small models, and it's I guess arguably close or comparable to R1 in some situations. You can certainly get there with some thinking on it. But it requires 1/32 of the compute. That's the key headline, right? The headline number there is
Right. So let me ask you something. How easy it is for others to replicate what Google did here?
I mean, you could just install it. It's free. Oh, it's open source.
Really?
Sorry, it's open weights.
Okay, so Gemma 3 is here. Our new open models are incredibly efficient. The largest 27 billion parameter model runs on just one H100 GPU. You need at least 10x the compute to get similar performance from other models.
10x is generous. It'd be 32x, 3.2x. Or sorry, yeah, 32x.
Yeah. So this is when you're running inference, you can run it on one H100 GPU, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is a big deal, right? Because that's where cost comes
So
from. Each of those is 40K.
So how is Nvidia stock not down today, based on this?
Markets are slow. Markets are not going to take onto this because they don't understand it. When it's like China, threat of China, that's why they freaked out. They didn't even read the paper. They confused OpEx with CapEx. That was just markets are just dumb. I don't know what to say. They don't understand papers.
So are you short Nvidia then?
I sold Nvidia a long time ago. I did sell covered spreads on it, as I mentioned in your space. I think right now I have no position on it.
So why not short it? If you think this is 1/30th the GPU needed for inference, why not short it?
I have learned about myself that my timing is often wrong. Not because the direction eventually isn't right, but like with Nvidia, especially like right now the markets are pretty down. I don't want to go short things when I think things could go up with interest rates, and I think that's where you and I differentiate on the macro side. I think interest rates might come down faster than the market is expecting.
Okay, where do you think interest rates are? Let's say, which interest rate do you want to focus on, by the way? You want to focus on Fed rates or 10-year yield?
Fed rate, 10-year yield's harder to control.
So how many cuts are you? Market is expecting right now 3 cuts for this year. How many are you expecting?
I thought the market's priced as if it's only going to be 2, and I think there will be 3.
Well, it's been changing around 1 to 3. Let me just look at currently right now. I looked this morning. I think it was about 3. The CPI came in slightly lower than expected.
Okay, maybe after the CPI numbers. I didn't check since today. Yeah, I didn't check today.
Yeah, I mean you're right. It's 2 to 3. It's 3, but more on the 2 side now. So you're thinking 1, right? Or did you say 1 or 2?
I said 3.
All right, so you agree with the market then?
Well, but like you and I both know the difference between 2 and 3 is pretty big, right? Like from market expectation.
All right, cool. So you're saying that if the Fed cuts 2 to 3 times this year, then the interest rates will come down, and that will boost sales for.
Maybe it's 2 times, but I think it'll be 0.75 total this year. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Do you want to? Is there anything else you want to talk about on AI?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of innovation there, as especially as we're talking about like open weight models. It's when you combine that with thinking models, it's a very big deal. Especially the Gemma model that came out that's super small, 1 billion. That's a gigabyte. You can run that on anything. Right? You can run it on like anything. So like models have now become a commodity. So I think AI, everybody who's like worried about NVIDIA stock and trying to explain why there will be increased demand. I just want to go back to like 2 years ago. I remember you, me, and Wes were in your space talking about like which direction. Oh, he's in the audience too, if he wants to come up. I didn't see him when I started this sentence, I'll be honest. But we were discussing like what's going to grow faster. There's 2 curves. There's the TAM for people who want to use more AI. That total is going to rise at a certain clip, and then there's the TAM for or not TAM, sorry. There's the curve that represents the number of chips you need to serve the quality that people think is good enough, and that's going to decline. And right now, my favorite dashboard to look at is OpenRouter, because you can see where people are spending their money. And the models that are increasingly winning aren't the best quality models, but the models that are good enough. And turns out from 99% of applications, people just need a model that's good enough, and then they go by cost per token versus going by best performing benchmark in the most arcane use case.
Makes sense to me. Yeah, if Wes wants to come up, he's welcome to come up. I sent him a request to speak. There he is.
By the way, there has been some progress on a thing we talked about. Not exactly the same, but remember we talked about dynamic window sizing?
Yeah.
There hasn't been progress in dynamic window sizing because that's mathematically hard, but there has been recent progress. It's called mixture of depth in how much attention is paid to each token. So the weighted cost per window is now dynamic. Actually, no, that's not fully true either. That's also kind of fixed for it to work mathematically. But where the weight is spent is somewhat dynamic. So in theory, there are there's more progress happening in that space. I don't know if you want to be updated on it, but it's really early, but people are trying to figure out mathematical ways to solve that dynamic attention problem.
Wes had a connection problem while connecting. I sent him an invite to speak, which works better in this situation. So Wes, if you can accept the, we can bring you up then. All right, thank you, Meta, for that update on dynamic window sizing. And you said it's very, very early.
Yeah, it may not be possible. I want to make
it
clear.
Right? I want to focus on a bit more near-term stuff. All right, so let's see. We talked about Grok, Gemma. You said NVIDIA, the market is behind, but you're not shorting. And on Tesla, so you had a quick, I guess, a bounce trade kind of thing. Are you kind of like overall position? I think you sold most of it last I heard. How are you doing after this 50% drop?
I started buying. I actually posted it on my timeline. I don't really want to be posting all the time about when I'm buying and selling. It just feels like something I don't want people to be replicating, but I did feel because I spoke about when I was selling, it made sense to speak about when I was buying. And I only spoke about the selling because I know a lot of people were following me, whether I tell them not to or not, whatever, right? But I did use something called a decumulator, so it is a little different. Most of my exit was at 438, and I've been buying back under 280. So people can do the numbers. I was fine with it. I sold about 25% of my position, and I plan to build it back up.
Okay, great. So you're going to build it up over time. You started buying below 230, and you don't see it going to $100 per 280, and you don't see it going under to $100 per share.
I mean, it's not about whether I see it or don't. If it goes below 200, I'll just buy more.
What about 100?
Position of life. I would just hold. Like I don't use margin, so I don't have to sell. Somebody can stand outside my house and yell all the prices they want. I don't have to sell them the house.
Okay, cool. Wes, welcome. Wes,
Hey, thank you. It finally started working. I had to do some finagling.
Do you have anything to add to what Meta said on Gemma announcement by Google? Or do you have any updated thoughts on NVIDIA or Tesla stock price?
I'd be interested to hear Meta's take on Gemma. Is that what I don't even know what Gemma is. Updated thoughts on NVIDIA? No, I stay the course. I still think inference and trading is going to massively increase over time still.
I went ahead and posted the most important picture from the report. Yeah, I mean, people can just look it up as well. Gemma's came out yesterday night, so it's not. I get it if you haven't heard of it. There have been a few other model developments too, but I think this is, like Reddit and Hacker News. People are looking forward to this because it is open and it is a very different cost structure than like everything else. So I think right now, to me, what's interesting is to see is the API library prices and the open models. That's indicative, in my opinion, of how the cloud space for AI will go. Then there's a separate space, which is like, the chat bot, right? So you got your Groks, your chat GPTs, your Geminis, your Claudes. That's a different space. I'm not personally bought in that the chat interface is going to be the way that people continue to use AI for long term. I think, a good relationship with an assistant isn't where you tell the assistant what you want all the time and they do exactly what you tell them. A good relationship with an assistant is that they learn about you and then they do things seamlessly behind the scenes. And so that's what everybody says, when you're going to go agentic, things are going to go behind the scenes and things are going to happen for you. That interface then switches from like this chatbot to something else, right? Like meet the person where they are. So if you're using a food tracker like MyFitnessPal, maybe the AI should live there. If you're using a dating app, the AI should live there. If you're using a book reading app, the AI should meet you there. So AI is going to land in all the different places where we do things, and then those interfaces, I think, are how we interact with it. So API calls represent to me the real lead, and the open source model comparisons help us know how fast things are declining in a very public, open way. And so I don't know how you keep the TAM the same when inference cost is declining faster than people predicted, right? Like I think people thought 10x, but right now we're seeing almost 10x every 6 months, not 10x every year.
Wes? Wow, I left him speechless with that argument. I think he kind of like.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also multitasking. I'm trying to do work at the house. So I would generally agree with you. I think over time, agentic AI is the way forward. I'm not sure about like really specific AI. I think that's more short term. I think longer term we'll have obviously more generalized AI, and the general AI will interact with maybe the specific AIs, but we won't. It'd be a hierarchy. I need to read up on Gemma. I don't know what it is, so I can't really talk to that. But overall, I feel like the agentic AI movement is extremely promising, and I'm already taking steps to take advantage of that. From my perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you see the Chinese model that came out? I'm forgetting the name, Mara or something like that.
A tiny bit, but I don't know enough about it to talk about it.
Oh, sorry, Manus. So Manus
Yeah,
AI,
Manus.
yeah, Manus
Yep.
AI is not open source, so we can't really look into the numbers. Unfortunately, they didn't publish it. Like, if they publish a technical report, I apologize, I haven't read it yet, so it's not fully on my plate. But based on what I'm seeing, they have a very good implementation. I think they built it on Claude and something else. So they didn't train their own model, but they did do a really good implementation on existing models. I don't remember which exact ones. And they have a really good agentic suite, and people are using it. And the reason why I bring it up is that has taken off, and all they did was differentiate with implementation of the UI and the interface. So I think we're going to start to see more innovation in that space. which leads me to think that, we can't just compare subscription as the only way people will use the model. I think long term, people will find other ways, and AI just becomes a commodity. And specifically, the reason I bring that up is you look at all these phones, and they have very capable phones. For most applications, I think the phone is going to be good enough to run a model for what you need. And then every now and then you go
that
off
I
the
agree with.
cloud. Yeah, and then because everybody already has a phone, and most people iPhones and Google Pixels and Samsungs, they all have accelerators on there that work for matrix multiplication now. I see that as a huge threat. Once everything starts to move to the edge, people want privacy, stuff stays local, it's fast, it's responsive. With Titans possibly merging into this thing like Gemma, now you have billion parameter models. Like that fits on your phone. Like you could fit multiple of those models on your phone. Not that you would need to. And then you could see it have effectively, 2% of Wikipedia or 0.2% of Wikipedia as a context window. Like it's getting crazy how advanced these things are now. I just don't think it's kind of like, it reminds me of like when Tesla was starting out, right? Like all the parts and products were out there, they just need to be put together. It doesn't feel like innovation is needed at this point to see edge compute happen.
Quick question for you. I heard you say that AI will be largely commoditized. And maybe I'm misrepresenting that, but I'd like more clarity on your thoughts around that. So
Sure.
My sticking point is, do you think all AI in the future, whatever many days or months or years or whatever you think that is, will be all commoditized, or will there be a hierarchy? I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
I think there will be a hierarchy, but I think when the market specifically, like, I don't think the market is well informed about AI. So I'll start with that. I could be wrong there, but I think the market, when they think of like, oh, you could use AI in this way, you could use AI in that way, and they're like doing all this pricing. They're like, oh, Outlook and
Okay.
computer and this and that. They
Yeah.
don't realize how much, like 80 to 90%, maybe even 95% of that workload could shift on device, and then
Yeah.
there goes all that cloud pricing that they're doing.
Okay. So when you say the market, do you mean the stock market or
Stock
the
market.
journalism? Okay, the stock market. Okay. I would assert that the stock market has no idea how to deal with AI yet. I would
I
assert
agree.
that.
So we agree on
All
that.
they know, all they know is that a lot of leading tech companies are spending a crazy amount of money. That's all they know.
Correct.
They do not know exactly how this is going to affect their bottom lines. All right now is it's a huge capex.
And I
Right?
think a
And
lot of the market is assuming they're going to continue that capex. Like they think of it like, oh, they're buying steel to make refrigerators, but in reality, what they're doing is they're buying steel to make the factory. Once the factory's made, they only have to buy electricity. They don't actually have to buy steel anymore.
Well, I mean, so do you really believe that they're not going to buy more steel? In other words, like they're not going to buy more advanced compute? I mean,
Yes.
the successor to Blackwell is going to drastically outperform Blackwell. You agree with that, right? And then NVIDIA has at least a 5-year roadmap to demonstrate that they're going to continue to 10x or 20x or even 100x, tick-tock chip architecture design, over time. So do you agree with that?
I agree that NVIDIA has a roadmap and they're going to continue to do that. I don't disagree with that. I think they have to kind of push that narrative. I think where my instinct disagrees here is when you look at Amazon's original strategy, right? And how they came and became very big as a cloud provider, they actually bought a lot of used machines. They didn't actually buy market price Dell machines at the time. They bought used machines. They put together a ragtag group of machines, and they got really good at serving a heterogeneous
Wait.
data center.
You're talking about the very beginning of AWS? Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not true or indicative of mainstream AWS. So
Not today.
that's startup. That's startup. I agree with that. But like, dude, I worked in cloud for many years. So
I know it's very homogenous.
that was very, very, very small part of their early business was, this used very scrappy mentality.
Hear
So
me out,
that's
though. Hear me out. The
all
argument I was
right.
trying to
All
make is
right.
different. So because they had to have a heterogeneous architecture, they developed things, or well, I don't know if they developed there, but they applied things like RAID very effectively, fault tolerance very effectively, all those kinds of things. And we're starting to see that come out, especially from DeepSeek, who was forced to do that ragtag thing because they couldn't just buy the chips. As they do that, and those open source libraries that they opened up in their week of open sourcing, right, which is more than OpenAI has done in their entirety of their as a company, that makes it so that the barrier to having to use the large, most expensive, complex chips is dropping. So like you really don't need them for most applications. So if 90% of applications can move to device, so you don't need to buy the expensive hardware, then a huge chunk of things that needed those expensive devices can now move to these freed up chips. You're going to see a compression downwards. And then at some point, you look at test time compute, you look at other things, you look at caching strategies. You can continue to push on a software front, which will delay major purchasing of higher and higher expensive chips. I'm not saying that you stop buying chips altogether. That's not what I'm saying. That's why also when Yaman asked me why am I not shorting it, I don't think for the next year it's very clear. But I think there will come a point where there will be a correction because people will, in the market, they will have to adjust their expectations and go, "Oh, we thought people were going to keep buying chips. We didn't realize it was like a apple going through the snake."
Okay. Great discussion. Anything else on that?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath because I'm doing shoveling. So you don't think that state of the art is going to continue to push hardware development and innovation? Is that what you're saying?
I am not saying that they won't continue to push innovation. I just don't think it's needed, right? Like it's kind of like LFP is good enough now.
Okay,
People could
great. Now
innovate,
tell me
but it's not
why.
needed. Okay,
What?
so
Yeah, if maybe you're already doing that. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, no.
I want to know why.
So I think everybody has settled on transformers. So the ASIC architecture for transformers is good enough. At some point, you hit this moment, and I could be wrong, but the moment might be someone has a particular chipset design. The fabrication is high. We know how to use it. Software has adjusted to using it, and it's as popular as Intel's x86 architecture. Then somebody comes along and says, I've got a better, more performant, far, far better architecture. And if I compare that design on hardware to x86, it's dominant and you should switch over to it. And the industry looks at it and they say, there's not enough volume production of that thing. The cost I would have to pay to buy that thing and then move all my software over, it's just not worth it. Had we gone back in time and known this when we started x86, we would have chosen your architecture, but we're too far past the point of efficiency to go back in time now. And I think that's going to start happening because there is a real cost to switching, right? Unless Chris Latner succeeds there, but even still, like there is a cost to starting a new fab line and starting a new hardware versus at some point saying this is good enough. Now we just need to pump this one thing out. Like at some point, I guess what I'm trying to say is NVIDIA will have to drop its margins significantly or demand will crater.
Obviously, margins will fluctuate. I agree with that. Now, to say that they're going to fluctuate wildly in the near future, I would disagree with that. The
What
demand,
happens?
the insatiable, just real quick, the insatiable demand is going to continue until we reach some undeniable point of AGI. It's just going to, that's my belief. Like, I don't see how you could argue against that, from an innovative state of the art standpoint. Like, that's the race and you're in it. Like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
yeah.
And I'm stating my opinion as somebody who's in the race. So I'm I'm not coming at this from an uninformed way. I'm just saying there's two races happening. One race is how fast can you get to AGI? That's one way to look at it. And the other one is how can you get to AGI in an actual viable way, which requires the cost to be kept in mind. And if you just run as fast as you can to AGI, then your theory is when you get there, then the AGI, which actually you're now calling SGI probably, will design the chip that'll make it cheaper for it to actually be viable. Or you're arguing that AGI is so valuable that people pay any price for it. But we know that's not true because when Sam Altman is saying $20,000 for a monthly subscription to something that's PhD level, people are gawking at it. maybe they don't trust that the quality will be there, but like I don't think people are willing to pay as much for AI work as they are for human work.
Really?
Money matters.
Do you believe that? No,
Yeah,
wait, I got to nail you on something.
Okay.
Do you believe that?
I do.
Do you believe that will continue for the foreseeable future?
I think if employers could get away with paying humans less because there weren't minimum wage laws and there weren't humans on the other line, they would pay them less.
Wait, hold on. Granted. Talk more about the thing that you just kind of blew my mind with. Why do you think that human labor will always be, for the foreseeable future, more valuable than digital labor? That's what I think you said.
Yes,
am I correct?
that is that is the contrapositive of what I said, right? What I was saying is digital labor will always be cheaper than human labor. The correlation causation is
valuable.
Direction is being.
Let's talk value for the sake of Yaman and value analysts. Let's talk value, because that's what runs companies.
Yes.
Value.
So human labor will increasingly be focused on the last hardest 0.0001% of work. So
sure,
marginally, that work will become more valuable because the rest of the work has been commoditized across many different models.
You think it'll become more valuable?
Yeah, because it's the only thing that is different. Like if you can pick from 10 or 20 different companies that have huge data centers and they're all providing APIs and they're all competing on price and there's no minimum API pricing laws like there is for minimum wage, all of that will compete downwards, right? And the most efficient models will win.
Oh, sure, but you still agreed to the hierarchy, right? Not everything will be commoditized, correct?
Okay, so when I'm saying commoditized, I'm saying everything will compete on price per token. So yes, I do think everything in AI
of course, everything competes on price, but is there a hierarchy or not? I believe that there's going to be a hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy in that some of the work will be cheaper than other. Like, yeah, we already see that, right? There's tiered pricing. I guess I'm not understanding what you're trying to ask here, Wesley.
Yeah, sorry. In the longer term, because we already see this in the short term, it's already playing out. In the longer term, you can pick a time frame. I would say, indefinitely for now, there's always going to be a hierarchy. Would you agree or not agree?
I think I'm not understanding what you're saying by hierarchy.
Oh,
are you saying
great.
demand?
So there's always no. I'm saying state of the art. There's going to be some models that are cutting edge, state of the art. Those are going to be more valuable and not commoditized. Then you're going to have a set of, let's just call them inferior models, smaller models. They're going to have less value. And there's not going to be just one level. There's going to be many levels of less value. And I put quotes around less because like the value is just different. It's not going to be as like cost per token, is going to generate you this much perceived revenue in your line of business. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
What I'm trying
what do
to
you
say
believe?
is I believe, and before we get too far into my specific beliefs, but I just looking at the data, what I believe here is at some point, the value that people are placing on hardware's capacity to bring you to AI versus the value that they're placing on software's capacity to bring you to AI is going to dramatically shift over to software. It's already shifting, but it will dramatically shift to the point where we'll see what we saw with Silicon Valley and hardware collapses in price.
So you're on the software side of the equation.
Yep.
You think that software is going to drive state of the art, but not hardware. Is that correct?
Kind of my career, but yeah.
Yeah. So you know my career. I've been on both sides. I mean, literally, I've been on.
I realize that
I've been on all
we're
sides.
having right now.
Yeah. So now I understand where you're coming from. Your bias is software.
Yeah, I'm biased. For anybody not aware in the audience, I have worked a long time in model compression. I do work on something slightly differently now. I can't talk about that.
No. Please don't, because like this is a great conversation because I think
what gives you confidence that hardware is going to drive that distinction, not software?
Well, I think Meta will agree with this. Like that's been the only thing that's driven innovation. Only thing.
I disagree.
Hold on. Let me finish. The only thing that's driven innovation, you have to have the hardware first. It's a chicken and the egg, and this is the problem. If you don't have the hardware, you cannot be state of the art, because anybody that develops software on inferior hardware is always going to get eclipsed in a very short amount of time with more advanced hardware. That's what I believe.
I agree that in the beginning, there's a phase to this, right? It's risk versus risk, like the same Dave Peterson debate that always continues over time, and it swings both ways. All the time the pendulum swings. But in my opinion, I think what causes the pendulum to swing is like large breakthroughs. So when large breakthroughs happen in software, like transformers, when a large breakthrough happens, the software has gotten way too far ahead of what the current hardware can do. And then whatever hardware is built to accommodate the new software architecture becomes the most critical thing. And during that phase, while software is too far ahead of the current hardware, they have to keep compromising downwards to the hardware, and then hardware drives innovation. I agree with that during that phase. But then there's a tipping point where the hardware manufacturers, it's kind of like the miners for like batteries, right? Like the hardware manufacturers finally go, hey, you know what? It looks like there is enough demand for this. I will spend the money to build up the fabrication. I will build something super specialized than like a GPU. I'll actually build an ASIC for this. And when they start doing that, after that starts, now software drives innovation, not hardware, because you have to have another large leap that is really divergent and non-compatible with the hardware to then start convincing that hardware manufacturers to make a big change.
This is great. Okay. So let's say hypothetically you're in that position. Now your software is, quote, driving innovation. Do you believe that the folks that are developing that software are not staying in now lockstep with the next generation of hardware and making sure that it runs efficiently on that hardware?
No. Of course, they're talking to each other. Of
Yes.
course. Yeah.
That's the driver of innovation.
Yeah, sure.
You don't see that?
But NVIDIA.
Come on, dude.
Hold on. But is NVIDIA in conversation with model developers?
Yes.
Is Amazon in conversation with Amazon, Microsoft in conversation with Microsoft, and Google in conversation with Google?
No. We didn't talk to AWS and cloud. Are you kidding? Like, biggest competitor. There's no way. There's a lot of shady shit that happens between the companies to get a leg up.
I think the companies are talking to themselves is my argument, right? So NVIDIA is in this weird position where they make. So okay, hold on. NVIDIA is in this weird position where they make hardware for large corporations that can afford to make their own hardware. Intel was not in that position back in the day, and NVIDIA has never been in this position. But the markets have really shifted where the power really lies in the software companies now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I hope this is a good conversation, and I'm willing to keep up with this for another 15 or so minutes. Okay,
yeah,
great, good. I'm glad you're
good.
liking it. Okay, great. I would completely disagree with your assessment on Intel. So for folks on the call, like I worked with Intel for the better part of like 15 years when I was at Dell and Microsoft, like building on their hardware. And it wasn't until I shifted to Xbox that I started working with AMD very closely to build our custom ASIC Jaguar chip that powers Xbox. You can grok it to look up the details on that. But at the time, like there was no innovation without the hardware. The hardware drove us to make new software. Be like, oh, we can do all this cool shit with the, video rendering pipeline, or we can do this cool shit now, with, the new model architecture and LLMs. So we can do all this cool shit. That's what's driving innovation. And as you build that out, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we can do this. This is amazing. This software really works really well on this hardware. All you can think about is generating the next set of hardware to make it even better and faster. And that continues. And that's driven by the hardware manufacturers because they can say no. They can just say, no, we're not doing that. We don't see the value.
I agree with everything you've just said. The only place I'm disagreeing is that the CapEx from the corporations stays the same as it is today. So
I completely disagree
that the CapEx would come down once?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
Hold
keep
on.
going. Sorry,
Hold on.
once.
Hear me out.
Say
Hear
it.
me out.
Say it. Yeah, say it.
Okay.
Sorry, my bad.
The difference between Intel and the difference between now is no one had anything and they were building up their data centers in the Intel time period. When GPUs came along, again, no one had anything. They were building up their stuff, but they didn't there wasn't like a giant race to just overstack how many GPUs were available because GPUs weren't used for cloud services at the time. They were used for like gaming and various other things. And some research departments were like figuring it out how they could use it in their cloud environment.
Okay.
Wes,
I've got a great story for you.
We're getting some background noise from you.
Yeah, I'm moving a bunch of wet dirt. Sorry, I won't do it as close to the microphone.
Okay. Meta, do you want to finish?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is different about right now is unlike then, all the consumers have a ton of equity, a ton of capital, and so they're able to actually make huge purchases of Nvidia really quickly and front load all their capex. And so unlike in the past where it's been like a smooth ramp and continued demand, I think right now what you saw was a race and they're buying a ton of hardware. And then once they've built up all the hardware and the capacity is big enough, at some point they say, okay, now we can really taper down. Maybe they continue to ramp a little bit. They're not going to it's not going to be like
I
Grok
hear
is
you.
spending money on hardware every single year.
So when does the taper happen?
Yeah, let me actually kind of tap in there. Wes, question for you first. So Microsoft, we're seeing quite a few rumors and news that Microsoft is, canceling data center projects or, pushing the pause button a little bit on capex purchases. Any thoughts around that? If the rates will continue until we get to undeniable AGI, like you said, why isn't Microsoft spending even more?
Yeah, I think the rumors are not true. There's simply no way that they would slow down.
Well,
I mean,
Microsoft CEO was asked on a podcast. It's a one-on-one conversation, which I really haven't seen him do before. And he said he was asked the same exact question. If this is about reaching AGI and economic profits are measured in tens of trillions of dollars, like you're saying, why not spend hundreds of billions of dollars instead of tens of billions of dollars buying GPUs?
Yeah, well, obviously they can't spend everything, and nobody's gone all in. Maybe except for XAI and OpenAI, right? They're digital native. They're still protecting some of their legacy products and legacy thinking. So it's legacy thinking all over again, like with OEMs. That's like the simplest way I can say it.
Okay. Now, I'll give a word to Meta too, and then I have a follow-up question for Meta. And the question is, do you think Grok 3 justifies the money XAI spent buying GPUs? Meta?
Okay, so first on the OpenAI thing, OpenAI hasn't been able to get even more hardware. They've literally been GPU constrained for their messaging as to why people are being throttled. Either they're lying about why people are being throttled or they don't have enough GPUs, which begs the question, if they don't have enough GPUs, what's keeping them from just continuing to have bought GPUs? It's not like they couldn't have anticipated this. They were already rate limiting people on other models before this. So something has clearly shifted where OpenAI can't convince Microsoft to buy more GPUs.
Exactly.
In that space, right? So I think that's very clear. Second, on the question about was the money well spent, I think the person making this expenditures wanted to have a stake in the game, and they spent the money to do it. And so for them, it was worth it, right? Like value is relative. It's not about
no,
if
I'm
I was an
saying
investor,
purely from a financial perspective. So
I'm
forget the person making the money.
Yeah.
Do you think the billions of dollars that XAI spent buying GPUs is justified by the performance you're getting now today from Grok 3?
So am I talking about this like a utilitarian as a human on the planet, or am I talking about this as a shareholder? Like which perspective do you want?
You're talking about a pure capitalist, Gordon Gekko, greed is good capitalist.
I think that will be determined based on their pricing on the API. I think, and I'll put this out there, it is very possible that Grok, which they did, demonstrated an ability to spend a lot of money, have a lot of capacity, build out hardware, and that should allow them to attract some talent that can that has a palate for the leadership there.
Sir, I'm looking for a yes or no. If you're Gordon Gecko, and with the benefit of the hindsight, would you have approved the GPU purchase?
I personally would say no.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
But there are other reasons to disband it, and for those
Of
reasons, yes.
course.
But you're
Like
I just
that,
want to make it clear for the
like there's
audience. I want
sure.
to make it
No,
clear
I
to the
got
audience.
you. If Elon's listening, you're
No,
not calling me
not
dumb.
I'm talking to
I'm
I'm
justifying
talking
this
to
purchase.
grants of the world who cherry pick.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay, never mind. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the entire thing, right? That's the whole deal right here.
Well, no, like I mean, you're making a bet, right? Like,
That was a multi-billion-dollar bet on scale laws.
and it paid out. It worked.
I don't think so.
From an academic perspective, they proved something really to an extreme, which is good.
They proved that they can catch up to the leader. That's about it.
They proved they could catch up to the leader, but they also proved that they could string things together, and that
Right,
things are
exactly.
verifiable, right? So, like,
Exactly.
you could say catch up to the leader. You could say in science, peer review. They've demonstrated that if everything we had in AI got lost tomorrow, someone could rebuild it.
Yeah. Okay, great.
What
Yeah,
they
but
proved inadvertently is that papers work. Yeah, like they're an effective way to preserve humanity, human knowledge.
right. Do you think we're going to see Grok 4 anytime soon?
Probably not while they're on the leaderboard at the top. Probably not for another. By their own accounts, right? It took like 3 months just to train, so not another 6 months, maybe a year.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see the masses switching from ChatGPT to Grok in the next year or two? In the next couple of years, let's say 2-3 years.
I mean, Claude is underrated, man. Claude is
Well,
really good.
forget Claude for a second. Okay, no one knows what Claude is. All right, just focus on Grok and ChatGPT. Fast forward 3 years, assume nothing changes. Do you think the masses switch from using ChatGPT to Grok?
I think ChatGPT's numbers can only go down and Grok's can only go up. So yes.
Why do you say that?
ChatGPT is kind of the market leader in a sense, but they don't have an adjunct, right? So when you get a subscription to ChatGPT, you don't get anything else extra. With Grok, you do. You get X potentially. I could see it possibly get bundled into your Tesla Premium subscription one day. There could be various other ways that they bundle into Starlink connection or something like that. So there are continued ways.
I mean,
Where
but the thing is, like, so the Starlink connection isn't going to happen in the next couple of years, right? So the frame is more about 3 to 5 years. And with Tesla, you only have a few million people who might or might not use Grok on their cars. So that's not really, because we're talking on ChatGPT, there are hundreds of millions of people who use ChatGPT today.
No, that's not
And
true.
I think
That's
the
100
idea
million
that
users, not daily users.
not daily users, but hundreds of millions of weekly active users using the free version, right?
I would double check those numbers. I believe what they said, they have hundreds of millions of users.
I think they refer to weekly active users when they say users, but I'll double check. I'm pretty sure it's hundreds of millions of weekly active users on the the free version, and the paid version is about tens of millions around the world. But forget the paid version for now. Just focus on free version. All right. Hundreds of millions of free versions for ChatGPT, as opposed to, I think, about a few million people who use Grok Premium Plus. But I guess you have to. I don't think there's a free version of Grok, right? I guess.
Grok is currently free. Yeah, Grok is currently free. Yeah, so you could argue ChatGPT has about like 300 million actives if you include non-paying users. But that would also, I bet, include all their API usage and various other things like that, right? So they're using the broadest definition of user in that situation. Sure, but
so it would have to be a massive shift. So it's not just that. First of all, I don't think ChatGPT numbers are going to go down. I think ChatGPT numbers will continue to go up, and I think they're going to hit 1 billion users in the next couple of years.
Gordon Gecko would be upset in what you're saying. Your Gordon Gecko mindset there should be about paid users, not free users.
Not necessarily. If the paid users, if the free users allow you to improve your model, and then you can switch to paid users later on, That's one possible scenario in the future. So,
But we didn't
and
allow
also
that
like
for Gordon
also,
Gekko on XAI, so you can't allow it on OpenAI.
well, the thing is like with hold on a second, does Graph have free version or not? Because I think it's on the
It
paid
does.
version.
No, they
Oh,
opened it up for
I
free
didn't know that.
for a period of time.
Oh, really? So then what am I paying for? I mean, I canceled on my other one when they jumped the price from 20 to I think 40 something dollars. I'm like, well, I'm not fucking paying that. But in this account, I do have it. So I don't have to pay for it.
I think there's some features and there's rate limits. That's the difference.
Well, I use it like once a day, maybe more like once a week. I mainly use ChatGPT.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
think
see?
right now
Do
you can
you
use it for
see?
free.
Does Grok do anything better than ChatGPT, other than let's say coding level stuff that a lot of people use?
Science, math. I mean, they demonstrated. I think parity or equals hard, but like in their tests, they did show that it did better in certain things. I just think all of the use cases where you demonstrate difference at this point starting to feel esoteric to me.
Right. What about 4.5? What do you think of ChatGPT 4.5?
So that's a base model. It's kind of apples and oranges. You can't compare a base model to thinking models and refined and fine-tuned models.
Okay.
It is doing much better than 3. So in that sense, it was good. But their expense and their cost is so egregious that they shouldn't have released it, in my opinion. Right? It looks
Let me
so
ask you
bad.
something. Do you think, first of all, do you want ChatGPT?
I use it.
Eight. Do you use the $20 a month or $200 a month?
I have the $20 a month.
Really? So even you don't have the $200 a month.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it. I will I had it for a period of time to play with it. I have reasons to try all the apps, right? So like I'm not a typical user.
Right. Wes?
Sorry, Matt. I think you said it yourself. Is that 4.5 is a foundational frontier model? It's
Yes.
really like kind of not intended to be used widely. They're going to use it to train their reasoning models on it. Would you agree with that?
I know that that's the claim, right? So they're like claiming it's like their R1. It's going to be their
Yes.
R1 effectively, and then they're
Yes.
going to train
Yes.
down, and they're gonna have smaller models.
Yes.
I hear that argument, but even then, I'm saying that thing is.
You think
so
it's an argument?
No. That I think that's a justification after the fact, in my personal opinion.
There you go. Thank you.
Like I don't think that's what the intention was when they were training it, but based on the cost.
Really?
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't have any proof.
Okay, I know you're a bit biased, but I'm trying to really understand where you're coming from.
I am biased.
Yeah.
I'll declare my biases.
Yes.
There's when go back in time and like they were talking about when 4.5 is going to come out and how Sam was talking about it. He was not talking about it like we're so excited that 4.5 is going to enable us to do XYZ. He always said you're going to love 4.5, right? So that statement has shifted. Now it's become this will enable the next thing that you'll love.
Due to R1, I think. Correct?
Fair, but 4.5, let's ignore DeepSeek entirely right now. 4.5 is so egregious, even without DeepSeek in the picture. It's $150 to 41. Like, okay, DeepSeek is 40 cents.
Yeah, I know how expensive it is.
$150. Yeah. Google is 7.5 cents. How are these in the same category? Like, that's like a car that's a $2 million car compared to like a $30,000 car. You should not have them in the same discussion. Right, like to think of it a different way. If their cost is, and let's just be generous here, 150, let's call the other ones $1. If their cost is 150 times more, then for someone to train a distilled down training model, whatever their costs are, it will cost OpenAI 150 times more. I don't even think it's viable as a teacher model.
You don't think it's viable as what? Sorry.
As a teacher model.
Really? But you only really have to teach the other models once from 4.5. And that's in its current, hold on. That's in its current state, right? They will drive the price down of that over time. You agree, right?
No, I don't agree with that because the inference cost doesn't change. Once a model is finalized, the amount of GPUs it requires to run it on inference doesn't change. You'd have to retrain.
Oh, okay. Wait. I agree with that.
Okay.
But that's not what they're going to do, and you know that. They're going to iterate on the model to make it cheaper. You agree with that, right?
I don't agree with that. I don't think you can. So you can't iterate on the foundation. So the foundational piece is like Think of it like you're building a building. You built the foundation. How you build that foundation dictates how tall the building can be. So they've built a really overbuilt foundation, and they're like, okay, we can make a really tall building on this thing now. But their neighbor was like, yo, I made something for 150 times less, and my building can be just as tall as yours. Why would people buy that more expensive foundation when the buildings are the same height at the end of the day?
Because they're building the next building off of the first building. That's why.
Yeah, but you have to get a
Right?
gain. You have to get a gain from it. What I'm trying to say is they spent all this money, they built a foundational model, but the relative gain, foundational model to foundational model, isn't there. Just
I
comparing.
guess.
Okay. We fundamentally disagree on this, but that's a
Well,
longer
we
discussion.
can continue. We can continue another time. Meta, I was going to ask you a couple more other questions. So Meta, the company, is looking into buying their own, GPU designer, I think, or they trying to develop their internal GPU efforts, just like Microsoft has been trying. Amazon, I think it's kind of stunning how far Amazon came in such a short period. Because I think it was like a year, maybe a year and a half ago, we were talking about how Amazon was so far behind on the AI race, and now they have Trainium, working on Trainium 3. And kind of, what are your thoughts on Meta's efforts? Do you think they're going to be able to catch up? They're going to be able to develop their internal processes?
Yeah, they have a lot of money. People go work for companies who have a lot of money. They can buy the talent.
Yeah, I think these internal developments from these big tech companies are kind of the bridge between you two. I think Wes is correct that the demand for training and inference will continue to grow at a very rapid pace. And I think Meta is correct that NVIDIA isn't going to be able to charge the margins that it's able to charge today in the future.
Yeah, and to
Yeah.
put a timeline on it, I would say all we have to do is look to how many other big corporations are there. There's XAI, there's Facebook, OpenAI's already kind of gotten there, Google's already got their own way, Amazon's already getting their own way. How many other companies remain that need to make a large purchase of their data centers to be viable? And people are making the argument government's going to get involved, sure. But at some point, that pipeline of large purchases will dry up. And that's why I thought it would be a year or two last year.
Yeah.
We'll see if it's by the end of this year, but I can be overly optimistic on my timeline. So maybe it's
I
sometime
think
next year.
it's already happening. I think Microsoft already pulling the plug. I mean, we've seen many evidence of what's going on there.
And I would look to like other public companies that have been making the investments, like Amazon and Google, to see what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to remember if there's any other questions I want to ask on this topic. I guess the other kind of point of difference here is, when do we reach a point where inference becomes like, essentially endless? And I think Wes is overestimating how fast AI models are adopted by the average person. I agree with Meta that I don't think people are really willing to pay for these things at this time, and I don't think that's going to be the case for the next few years. Maybe 10 plus years. I agree, but that's far from today. Wes?
So how will you know that you're right a year from now about not investing as much in AI, which is what I think you said? How will you know a year from now?
Yeah, so you mean like, if I'm Microsoft, how am I going to know?
No. How are you specifically, Yaman, going to know that your
Yeah.
prediction was correct a year from now?
I mean, I think the market will speak for itself. Like, I think the Nvidia stock will drop far below $100 per share, maybe even $50 per share, and I think that's going to be driven by the recent weakness in their margins continuing, combined with a rapid slowdown in their revenue growth. So flat revenue, declining margins, kind of like what we see with Tesla today.
Okay, so I hear you talking about the macro as well as the AR market. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm specifically going to say, like, a year from now, Microsoft will in no way, shape, or form be investing less than they are now. That will not
Well,
actually
see, that's the thing. Like,
occur.
we can both be correct, right? If Microsoft continues to invest in training and inference compute data centers, let's say AI data centers, the same as it's doing today, that goes to what I'm saying, which is NVIDIA's growth rate will continue to slow down. And also, on top of that, to the extent that Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Meta continue to spend more, or either NVIDIA's competitors or their internal developments, then NVIDIA's share, again, kind of plays into that. So we can both be correct.
Oh, okay. So wait, half of my statement is they will not decrease their AI spend. The other half and the final part of my statement is they will continue to increase at either the same or a quickening trend than they already are. They will continue to transition their company to AI native. This is what I think everybody is going to. Every tech company has to transition to AI native.
Okay, and are you
So
also
they will
claiming,
continue to increase.
So do you have a third part to your statement, which is something like they will continue to buy NVIDIA GPUs at the
Yes.
same rates or higher, accelerating rates?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, I guess that's
Yes.
where we disagree. Meta?
Yep. That's where we disagree.
You asked my question. I'm on the same side as Yaman on this one.
Yes.
I think it
That's
won't be the
awesome.
same
So
rate of
I
growth.
stand alone.
Yeah, that's okay.
And my
Innovators
prediction is
stand alone
based off
often.
of reaching. Yeah, I know. And I'm fine with that. I'm comfortable in my manhood.
Well, there's a
For the
difference though.
foreseeable,
You stand alone against me and Meta. You stand together with most of the market today.
yeah, but not in the same way for different reasons. The market has no idea what's happening. They still don't. They have no idea what's
No,
happening.
Gavin Baker agrees with you. I think he has an idea, right?
I think he's going with the broken clock
looked.
theory, though, right? Like broken clock
Yes,
is right.
yes. Thank you. I've looked into Gavin's thoughts, so I don't align. My alignment is simply that there is nothing more powerful on this planet than AGI, and it's going to happen pretty soon. And when it happens, we're going to continue to accelerate that AGI's ability to get to an ASI, essentially. And it's just not going to stop. Like, this is the ultimate product. So that's where I stand. And the investments are going to continue to accelerate over time.
Okay,
That's where I'm at.
I think, Wes, you and I suffer from a similar thing here. There's a curse of being too knowledgeable about the space. And that is
exactly.
Like, climate change is clearly a bad thing. EVs are clearly a net good for the world. To most people who don't know how it works yet, you need to do a whole bunch of other things to sell that to people. And while that maybe only feel like it's true for EVs, I think the same is going to be true for AGI. I think there will be an antibody reaction for a period of time. There'll be back and forth. People will have fear. AI is going to take a time to get in, just like factories and other things. It's going to take a little bit longer for adoption than I think.
Exactly. And I mean, even today, and this has been the case for the last year that I've been doing this kind of informal research on my own. I talk to a lot of people from different backgrounds, different demographics, different income levels, genders, whatever you want, different geographies. And I ask the same question. Do you use ChatGPT or any other chatbot on a daily basis? And nothing has changed from today to a year ago. 9 out of 10 people say no. And then when I ask why, they're scared to use it. And that's not going to change. What's that Meta?
It's not the average person that I'm at all concerned about. It's the tech leaders and the tech innovators. They're all using it every day. That's all they do. And Meta knows this. So my point is different in that there's no fear for tech leaders and innovators wrapped around this. And once people start using it, there's going to be no anti-propaganda. There's going to be no fundamental discussion about this is bad. There's going to be no advertisements. There's going to be no anti-Tesla stuff coming from the oil industry. There's no FUD wrapped around this. It's all just what is the intrinsical
So
value,
what do you think is going to
the
happen? Do you
fundamental
think you
value.
think these big tech companies are going to go to $10 trillion and they're going to be the only ones making money, and that we're going to go into basically communism, and that the government pays us
No,
thousands of
no,
dollars?
no.
Do you think so?
Oh my
Then how are
God.
you going to do that? That how can you
That's
make sure?
hilarious.
This is what I mean. Like Silicon Valley, and I don't want to offend you, but kind of like as a manner of kind of hyperbole, I say Silicon Valley tech bros need to get the hell out of Silicon Valley and travel the world. And I'm glad you're going to China. But the fact is, most people aren't using this thing. So you can't have a situation where a few companies make 99% of the money in the world, and then everybody loses their job by next year.
Yeah. So I mean, I can point to like any tech innovation. The easiest one for most people is the iPhone. Like it took the iPhone basically 8 years to take over the market, right? And there was a lot of anti-iPhone stuff from Microsoft because I lived through that every day at Microsoft. So I saw the innovation leader, and then I saw the problem. So I'm like, clearly this is a better product. Clearly there's more value where I spend my time having to do a certain task. This is the better tool. That's AI. It's just fundamentally a better tool. It saves you time. It saves you money. Like everybody will adopt it. It's just a matter of fucking
That's
time.
true
Sorry
for
for my
calculators.
friends.
Everything you said is true for calculators.
Yeah,
All right,
and
let me
everybody
go
uses a
to.
calculator. So you're making my point. I don't
I know, but
understand.
is Texas Instruments the most valuable company in the world? Are they
Hold
ruling
on.
the world?
Texas, hold on. Texas, yeah. I have actually a pretty deep understanding of Texas Instruments because I worked for 3M in partnership with them for a while. So they just ceased to innovate, just like Epson, just like Xerox, just like Kodak, just like fucking Apple now. They're not innovating in AI. So like you're making my point. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. No
Like,
hands mode.
there's-
No hands mode, Meta, and then Henry.
Okay, two arguments that came up from there. One, I would argue Apple's doing what Apple always does. They're letting the market kind of shake it all out, and then they will really benefit from not having spent billions of dollars on foundational models and just using the open source models. Gemma's like a gift to Apple if you think about it. They can just say, "Hey, you know that whole Siri thing we were going to do? Psych, we don't have to do any integrations with OpenAI." And you know that whole presentation we gave about how everything was going to be private and on your phone? Done. Nothing has to leave your phone. Everything stays on your phone. You get great AI on your phone. It does everything you need. And if you want to use something that is like in an app and goes to the web, go ahead. You can do that. But within the phone operating system, there's no reason for Siri to actually go to the web and have a privacy leak, right? So that's one. Two, on this notion that you're asking, like Yaman, you're asking people, do they use this? Do they use that? I think that's the wrong approach because what you're showing is the chatbot interface isn't the way people want to use the AI. And I agree with that. However, if you ask them, do they use a search engine? Do they use some form of assistant? Do they use various other apps that have AI built into them? The answer is going to be an astounding yes, right? Like people forget this, but like if you use google.com, you're using AI, right? Like how else has that thing been working for all these years?
Henry.
Yeah, great discussion, guys. Great points on both sides, but where do you guys fall on the national security aspect to this? And will China slow down if we choose to slow down? Do you think this is going to be handled, politically? Is there going to be? I'd like to get your thoughts on that because I personally,
Yeah.
I side with Wes on that no one's going to slow down.
Yeah,
People
we'll
are already
continue
slowing
to
down,
invest
dude.
more than China.
Microsoft is already pulling the plug on OpenAI. If people are denying that, they're just choosing to ignore evidence.
That's because Microsoft is making their own chips.
They're canceling data centers, man. They're literally pulling the plug. That we talked about this for many times in this space. Like you can't
They're
ignore
moving
evidence.
to a vertical model where they're making their own chips and designing their own data centers, and they're finally following Google's model.
But
Finally.
Wes, that's the entire crux of the argument, right? This is the risk CISC, right? Things were really complex instructions, and so NVIDIA.
I want to read for the benefit of the audience. I want to read a couple of headlines. Microsoft dropped some AI data center leases, TD Cowen says. Microsoft has canceled some leases for US data center capacity, according to TD Cowen, raising broader concerns over whether to secure more AI compute capacity. This news came out February 24th. I think the investor relations denied it, Australian in a conference Australia. But if you look at the specific wording of how they denied it, they basically said we're on track to spend what we said we were going to spend. So these cancellations, at least I think, is for future. And then Microsoft cancels 200 megawatts of AI data center leases, according to you. So that's a lot of GPUs. We're talking, I think, hundreds of thousands of GPUs here. And then there was another one in Wisconsin that I'm trying to find. This was a few months ago. Let me see. In the meantime, Meta, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the argument earlier was more about NVIDIA focused. So I agree with you that the industry may continue to spend money on hardware, but it'll be more vertically aligned. And it's the risk versus risk debate. So with Dave Peterson, for folks that want to go read about this, go ahead. Like there's been this constant debate of like, should you have reduced instructions or should you have complex instruction? And complex instructions necessitate a company like NVIDIA that has a expertise in how to manage all those complex instructions. When you get to reduce instructions, it's not as necessary. I was in a space with Sierra and we were using the analogy of like, you have a pizza company, you have these different pizza companies competing against each other. And the market used to be a market where you need a lot of complex ingredients. And there was only one pizza company that had access to a lot of those ingredients. And now it's turned out with Transformers, everybody just wants a cheese pizza and everybody can make cheese pizzas. So then that one company's dominance has declined
Exactly.
as a result of that.
Exactly.
So
Let me
either
just
way
read
you
this
look at it,
blurb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finish it. Either way you look at it.
So yeah, either way you look at it, it's not positive for NVIDIA.
Yeah.
So I just want to hone in on that one thing. I agree that innovation will continue. I just disagree that it has to be from NVIDIA.
Exactly. Microsoft pauses construction of portions of $3.3 billion Wisconsin data center to evaluate new designs and technological developments. The first phase of the project, Area 3B, is still on track to be operational in 2025. The company remains committed to the project and plans to spend the full $3.3 billion by 2022, according to summary. Quotes from Microsoft, company spokesperson. We are currently reviewing our plans for the second expansion of Mount Pleasant data center. We have paused early construction work for the second phase while we evaluate scope and recent changes in technology. This came right after DeepSeek, and consider how this might impact the design of our facilities. Yeah. I mean, I see like the way I kind of overall see it is the absolute amount of spend, AI data center spend, will continue from these companies, but the mix will shift away from NVIDIA. So either others or internal developments. So that means slowing revenue growth, maybe even negative revenue growth for NVIDIA in the coming quarters, and also declining margins. I also want to talk about Meta before you head out. I also want to talk about the Tesla takedown protests. So there's I think about more than go ahead, Wes.
Microsoft's play into their own chip is similar to Dojo in Tesla. It's a hedge. They're going to continue to accelerate buy from NVIDIA.
Yeah, I don't
There you
know.
go.
I don't know.
They
I think Amazon is proving that it can be done, and Google obviously proved that it can be done.
So let me see if I can. Could I try and see if I can convince you, Wes? I don't want to like push on it too much if you don't want to. Like I think the reasoning behind this is.
Oh, it's fine. Go for it.
You know how like you have multiple iterations on a chipset, right? So the first time you run the through the chipset, you don't know which blocks are going to be used more by the software. It's way too complicated. It's NP hard to figure that out. So you have to just build it and run it. And then you go and you unlock the bottlenecks, and then you find the new bottlenecks, and you keep doing the process. And that's why you have to go through many iterations, and that's why hardware has to keep innovating, right? One of the hard parts of that equation is that by the time you get to the next chipset, the software load changes. Then you get a next chipset and the software load changes. And that keeps happening. And so that kind of kept hardware makers in business. Do you agree with that description?
Sorry, on the surface, yes.
Okay.
But there's a lot of nuance there.
Yeah. My claim, and I just want to get like on the same page on that first, but my claim, and I want to see if this is where we disagree mainly, but my claim is we are now just making pizzas that are cheese pizzas. And so the block complexity has collapsed. And so figuring out where the bottleneck is super simple because everybody's just collapsing onto transformers, and every company can make the cheese pizza, including Microsoft. They can go to Broadcom, they can go to Intel, they could go to anybody. And while the TSMC chips will be slightly more power efficient and stuff, the waiting in the queue, going to NVIDIA to get it built, that margin is going to have to collapse to compete with all the other producers.
You really believe this?
I do.
Yes? Wow. So from a chip perspective, what you just described is incredibly complex and hard. And I think it's because you haven't actually like been involved in the production of chips, maybe,
Very fair.
over the course of years, that you don't understand the complexities of like how to make chips. Like,
Do you think it could be
like you think it's simple, like it's ridiculous.
No, I'm not saying
I
it's
mean, you
simple.
should talk to people that make chips. Like,
Okay, hold
talk
on,
to them.
I'm not saying it's simple. Let me see if I can articulate this better. Like AI was built differently before Transformers. Would you agree that like people used to think it was far more complicated to train an AI before Transformers, and now it's a lot more approachable? It's not simple, but it's still far simpler.
So it's different, and we can scale more. So granted,
Right.
it's a better scaling platform. Yes.
Yep.
I agree with that. And yes,
I-
AlexNet demonstrated that.
And I'm not saying that someone's going to be able to make chips in their garage, but Microsoft and Amazon and Facebook will be able to make it where they weren't able to make it before because the talent they needed was too disparate.
But you know that Trainium has been in development since 2017, and it's like not even a blip, in the overall marketplace.
But the problem is Trainium was targeting CNNs and RNNs, and those are hard.
Yeah. I understand, but that was their best shot back then. And they spent a crazy amount of money competing with TPUs. And they failed
sucked
miserably.
And they sucked. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
However,
the odds that they're going to be state of the art is extremely low. That's my point. They will not be state of the art. They will still be vastly behind. To the point where it has no value.
They don't need to be state of the art. They just need to be good enough to bring down margins on NVIDIA.
There's no way. Like, NVIDIA's roadmap is just too robust. That's my point. Like, they continue to offer a product that has no competition. That's why they demand 95, 97% of the AI market share. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy the market share they have.
What percentage?
There's no competition.
Today, I agree with you, but I'm going to ask what percentage of the chip design today?
Tesla had the same market share a couple years ago.
Hold on, I didn't hear Meta.
I understand, but it's like the fact that they have 90%
It's a
market
different
share
argument.
today. Why?
It's a different argument. The timeline to build these things out is much longer. Like, the design iterations are much longer.
I agree.
The complexity it's much more complex.
It takes 5-10 years to build a vehicle program, build a factory.
The difference, Yaman, is like when you build a vehicle and you ship the vehicle, you can test the vehicle works and everything, and you know that the vehicle works. The problem with chip production is you can spend billions of dollars building out the chip, and then only after you build it do you realize, crap, it didn't work.
Yeah, look at Tens Torrent.
Dude,
look at Jim Keller.
I think
the most prolific.
I think the people who worked on the Cybertruck production would agree with you that they have the same problem right now in their hands.
That's so different, and you know it. That's the truck works. Yeah. Whether or not is marketable is a different conversation. You're really stretching here. Like, from an engineering perspective, I agree with what Wes is saying. I think what I'm trying to say though, Wes, is that I think right now, if we look at the blocks on an NVIDIA chip that are dedicated, like if you were to take the total unique, let's say complex components on a chipset where NVIDIA has an expertise and a proficiency, let's say on their chips, it's like, I don't know, what 60% of their chip, it might be stuff that they have patents around or expertise in and an edge on. Of those, what percentage are still necessary for a efficient transformer design? That's what I'm trying to argue, is that
all of it.
Complexity has plummeted.
Yeah, I know I know they compete in different lines of business. They have like 7 different workloads that they can hold, but AI is dominating them. So they optimize the chips and the chipset and the whole SoC, they optimize that for AI.
Yeah,
So
I,
it's
I just want to
not
I just want you to
anymore.
split I just want you to split AI from transformers, because I think it's almost like software 1.0 and 2.0,
Oh,
right? Like there's
wait,
so many
hold
AI use
on.
cases.
Yes, transformers is now, and there
Yes.
will be a new model architecture that greatly accelerates how well we can scale with different scaling laws. Yes, there's going
That's
to be,
where
and
you
you
and I
know that, right?
disagree. Okay, we found the point of disagreement. I think the industry
So you
has
think that
simplistic.
transformers are going to dominate for the near future?
Yes, I think
Yes?
transformers get us to AGI.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, sure. Yeah. What's your point? Like, come
So if
on.
transformers get you
You
to
really think we're going
AGI,
to end with transformers?
no, I'm saying
Really?
if transformers get you to AGI, then the capex collapse happens before, not after. We switch from transformers to something else in the future.
This is a long conversation, but I disagree.
Okay.
This goes into like how architectures are going to change, how chips are going to change, how the entire market is going to transition to digital labor. Like this is a longer conversation now. I see where you're coming from, though, and I
It's
appreciate
always a fun conversation, Wes. I appreciate it. I agree. It's definitely a longer conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Man, how can you guys not agree on NVIDIA for the last 2 years? Like 2 years of data hasn't brought the consensus to one side or the other,
Well,
which is amazing.
what happens with Wes and I is we'll discuss and try and figure out where the trade-offs are and where our assumptions differ, and we then agree on
Yeah.
formula, just not the variable values.
Yes.
I
But
understand, but
realize that I'm not employed by a company now that participates in this. And inherent biases can potentially exist when you're employed by a company
Fair.
that participates in this race. And I'm not saying that you're employed by a company that participates in this race, but I am saying that biases will exist when such a thing exists.
Yeah, but
I
listen,
am. Full disclosure, I
the
am.
fact is, in the last 1 year period, Nvidia stock has underperformed the S&P 500. Wes, since we started talking about this topic, Nvidia stock has underperformed. So, what do you say to that? You think the market is just dumb?
Yeah, and I've said so like 3 times now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the market has no idea what's happening. They have no
So,
idea.
are you buying more Nvidia shares?
Wait, Yaman, to your own argument.
No, hold on. Are you
when
buying
started
more
shorting
Nvidia
things-
shares?
I have enough. I stay firm in my long-term. Dude, I'm a long-term investor. I'm not shorting. I'm not day trading. I'm not doing any of that weird stuff. I am long-term into NVIDIA. I'm long-term into AI, and that's where I stand. And you know that.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is if this company is going to carry us to AGI and the stock is so cheap now, trading at about, let's see, 39 times P ratio, something like 30 times forward PE.
Yes. Just so folks know, I have a lot of dry powder for Tesla. And I will be at Robotaxi Beta in June or whenever the hell it happens. So I will be there because that is the turning point. That is the part where robots start to take over our lives.
Okay. Wes, what do you think is the problem to Tesla stock price dropping below $100 per share?
Yeah, there's no end to the stupidity of the market.
Okay, and Meta?
There's no end.
It's possible, Wes says. Meta?
I agree with the statement that there's no end to the stupidity in the market. And I just want to say, your position, Yaman, was the macros are so bad that everything is going to go down. So you can't look at NVIDIA going down and then make that as an argument against Wes either. I think
no. When I say versus the S&P 500, I can't.
It's a higher PE stock, so it's going to get hit more. You know that.
I mean, listen, macros haven't gotten that bad so far. I mean, S&P 500 isn't even down 10%. So we're not even started.
I'm just pointing out the contradiction in your own position, in your formula.
No, there's no contradiction. There's no contradiction. If a company is so good and it's going to dominate the future and the margins are going to stay high, which, by the way, margins have continued to decline ever since we started talking about this. The revenue growth rate has continued to decline. As I published in my last article on Seeking Alpha, they've actually come in lower than I expected. And the CFO was asked the question, is the next quarter going to be the bottom for margins? And she answered it for 5 minutes and didn't say no. And then she was asked again and again, and she dodged the question 3 times. So that means it's not the bottom. So what does that say about Blackwell demand? Doesn't say good things. I can
Yeah, I
tell you
mean,
that much.
I agree with you in concept. I just want to say the level of certainty is where we disagree.
So neither of you give it more than 10% probability that Tesla stock will drop less than $100 per share to less than $100 per share.
If I had infinite money, it wouldn't drop because I would just buy the whole company. So somebody else out there with more money than me who thinks the same way might do the same.
Yeah, I think you're overestimating pent-up demand for Tesla stock. Let's just put it that way. In the near term. Is any one of you concerned that Elon is going to be 60 plus by the time robotaxis proliferate to, let's say, nationwide adoption?
Nope.
Do you think it's to continue to work just as hard at 60 plus?
I don't think he's written any code on the robotaxi stack. I'm not great about it. I think the company is built by people, not just the person at the top.
Okay, so he's going to be like Warren Buffett, work until he's 100.
I think he'll work smarter. And I do think that his work, the way he contributes has changed, drastically. Having worked for him for several years, like it has changed. He's a different person when he comes at arguments and when he comes at engineering trade-offs. Like he's a just different person. Like look at what's happened recently, like this morning with the Geo Starlink deal in India. Like this has been in the works for a long time, and he's played the long game. And he didn't have to, and he sometimes wouldn't in the past. But like he did that, and he did it really well. So he is thinking differently. Granted, autism and Asperger's aside, like he is willing to understand that there are forces at play, that he has to act like a businessman. And so some things I think he's softening on. I think he'll continue to soften in that. And I think he's going to be a leader.
Is it fair to say, Wes, it is your opinion that Elon is finding a way around his limitations by engineering other ways to get around them, like his emotional limitations, things
Well,
like
that's interesting. I think the people that he has around him tend to do him good, and he tends to lean on them more than he used to. And that's what I see as like the added value. Like I read this in the Walter Isaacson book, and I also experienced it firsthand, in the way that he attacks problems and the way that he understands these trade-offs over time. He's less expecting like change right now. And you can see this with Raptor design, and you can see this with Starship, and you can see this with even the last Starship explosion in the way that it's being handled. He hasn't flown, like he hasn't gone all, weird, with this explosion. He's actually attacking it like a good engineering manager, I think. So my hat's off to him in the future, because this is where I think that we're headed. We're headed for a
Yeah, I
more
know.
valuable
I
leader.
guess that's where we disagree, because I see that as a negative.
I think that's because you haven't worked in an engineering space, Timon. That to scale up, you need to be more dispassionate.
Well, okay, let me just put it this way. What do you guys think is the intrinsic value of Tesla Automotive today? If you
Whatever the
had,
market says. No, I'm kidding.
well, the market doesn't say anything because there's a combined
Yeah,
company.
I've already told you my price is 280. Under 280, I'm buying.
No, that includes energy and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm just asking about Tesla Automotive. So car sales around the world.
I did not do my
Including-
price when I did my pricing to figure out how much to buy it at. I assumed all the other things would just be neutral.
Okay.
So do you agree that Tesla Automotive includes FSD?
I definitely do.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so my value is closer to 500.
Billion.
Yes,
He
with
said
500
FSD.
today,
billion.
not future.
No. So no, not billion. Stock price.
So just
At
Tesla Automotive alone is alone. Okay.
At
So you're saying
$500 is. Go ahead.
yeah, so 766 billion market cap today at 176. So you're saying triple that. So you're talking about a $2 trillion valuation for Tesla Automotive.
Yep. And when FSD
Yeah.
scales, we'll realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I was answering the question for
So
today.
hold on, Meta, 1 second. So can you define when FSD scales?
Yeah, it takes over more cities than Waymo.
Ah, okay. When do you think that's going to happen?
26.
Okay. Meta?
Yeah, I would say it. You could define it as more rides than Waymo if you want to do it that way, Wes. Instead, it doesn't have to be more cities, right? That'll probably happen first. More rides.
Sorry, what? Say that again.
You could do more rides per week than Waymo. I think that'd be a earlier indication, and you might agree that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I might agree with that. I just feel like overall, Waymo's going to start pushing into a lot of cities really fast as soon as Tesla starts scaling, and it's going to be a race. And then they're going to try to
That's
fund.
going to happen, right? Because they have like lots full of cars
Yes.
now. So
Yes.
why
I
would they
know. I know it's happening. But they're, Google's going to fund Waymo with as much money as they can to hold on to as much market share as they can for a period of time until they can cement some amount of market share. Because at the end of the day, when you call a robo-taxi or when you call rideshare, and then the Waymo is going to show up maybe a little faster, maybe it's a little more expensive or whatever, there's a trade-off. And they're going to have some amount of market share. This is why people still buy stupid vehicles like Chevys, because they don't understand the trade-off, because there's a value that they intrinsically feel, but it's not a really good engineering trade-off. But that's another story altogether.
Yeah, people are not. I would say less than 2% of people think like engineers, and I'm only saying that because I'm including scientists in that number.
So Waymo today is in Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin. They're entering Atlanta, Miami in the next 12 months or so. And Wes is saying FSD is going to be in more cities than that. So let's assume they enter a couple more than that. So basically a dozen cities. When FSD is in a dozen cities, Wes believes Tesla Automotive alone is going to be worth $2 trillion.
Are they entering or touring? Because touring is not the same as them actually entering the markets.
But they're active in Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, and expands Bay Area service to include Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Altos, and parts of Sunnyvale. And they're also testing in Atlanta, Miami, targeted for
I
2025
see.
data.
You're including the other cities in the contiguous region. That's fair. That's fair.
So about a half a dozen as of today, and a dozen or so in about 9 to 12 months. Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like when we did some of the math on this, Wes, it does seem like they're getting 2 rides per car per hour on average, right? So that's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Wes, do you think FSD take rate will surge then throughout this year if robotaxis are coming to a dozen cities next year?
Maybe not. I'm not sure that Tesla is going to advertise it. And word of mouth does not spread fast, unfortunately.
Okay.
I think there'll be plenty of news articles written about it. I can see people using it enough, and if they don't get enough demand, unfortunately, they will have to either market or make a deal with Uber, right? But I think the way Waymo's probably getting away without having to use Uber in San Francisco means in some markets you don't need to rely on them. And the fact that Uber is willing to do partial deals in some cities and not others, that's also a kind of a telltale sign, right?
Do you guys expect any sort of sensor change in the cybercab that's coming?
Probably will be, just because you go with whatever's the cheapest product and supplier at the time, right? Like,
So what do you
have
expect?
iPhone cameras improved a lot? Probably not. So at the moment, I'd say no.
Well, I'm talking not just cameras, but also let's say LiDAR, radar, or anything. Either of you
No.
expect LiDAR or radar? Okay,
No
nothing. So
LiDAR.
no ultrasound. So just vision only for, as far as I can see, for Tesla vehicles. No pun
I
intended.
expect Waymo to get to vision only before I see Tesla ever include LiDAR.
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear, I do expect that one day Waymo will be vision only.
Okay. When do you think that's going to happen?
hard for me to say. It would probably be after they are positive, revenue positive, and then they're trying to just become more profitable.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't, like, do you see Waymo scaling tens of thousands of robotaxis with LiDAR?
I could see them do that for marketing reasons. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it looks like we're pretty much aligned than what we're thinking. I think where we disagree on NVIDIA is how much the megatech companies are going to continue to increase their spend to NVIDIA in the next couple of years. I see the mix shifting away from NVIDIA, just like mix shifted away from Tesla in the last couple of years. And then on Tesla, I see, my difference with, you guys is how fast robotaxis scale for Tesla. It sounds like, Wes expects a dozen cities by 2026. Meta, I don't know where you are on that. But I think it's more of a 2030 plus story for vision on the robotaxis. Meta, do you want to talk some macro?
Sure.
Okay. What do you think of today's CPI numbers?
Just as a heads up, I'm going to be eating for a little bit. So if you want me to,
Okay, we're
wait
gonna
for
end this in about 5-10 minutes. So let's just a macro talk. Wes, thank you very much
Okay.
for your contributions on the last hour, and
Yeah,
always
thanks, guys.
welcome back. Yep. Meta. So what did you think of today's CPI report?
I think it's great. I was actually, I tagged you on this. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm curious about like trueflation, and I know you and Machine have looked into it a lot more. So this is a question, not a not a statement.
No, I said that I respond to it, and I said it depends on tariff wars.
Oh, right, you did say that. Sorry, I forgot. I read that. I did read that. I just forgot. Yeah, I think it's very positive that it is going down. I think it was lower, right? It was, people expected 0.9. It was 0.8.
Trueflation or the actual CPI report?
The actual CPI.
Yeah, they expected 0.3. It was 0.2, both headline and core.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was down by 1 point. Yeah. Okay. We're getting close. Like it's not a one handle yet, but trueflation is promising, and the direction is in the right direction. I'm not. I think the market's over concerned about how tariffs will affect things. Not because I don't think the math on tariffs makes sense, but because I think people are not accommodating for other factors like purchasing decision change and domestic suppliers who have flexibility. And frankly, I think the biggest thing is the market is assuming far more rigidity in Trump's stance when he says something than they should be. Like I think he adjusts course as soon as he realizes he was wrong or people complain.
As soon as the market drops 5%, yeah.
Yeah, maybe not the best way to figure it out.
But here's the problem: if Trump can't implement higher tariffs and raise hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff revenue, then he can't pass the continuation of lower tax rates or lower taxes even further.
Aren't they just expanding the debt ceiling by $4 trillion?
I mean, that's one bill. We don't know if that's going to pass or whatever, but I just don't think these low tax rates can continue without any significant material amount of tariffs. So it can't just be a negotiation tactic. I think he's going to have to actually pass some of these tariffs to do what he wants to do on the other end.
No, I think I disagree with you here. I think they are going to raise the tax ceiling, and they're going to try and get there with cutting fraud and waste, and then
Okay, let's talk about that then.
Hold on.
Let's talk about
Almost. One sec. And then they're going to push for a lower interest rate, hoping that the economy will boom and grow their way out of the debt.
Okay. So Doge, obviously they haven't saved anything material so far. Let's say a couple $1 billion. The annual deficit is $2 trillion. When do you think Doge is going to get to $1 trillion of annual spending saving?
He said by the end of this year, so by the end of the 4 years.
Okay. So Doge is going to be extended another 2 years then. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if Elon's sharing it the whole time, because in the conference at the White House, there were already some signs like, oh, he doesn't really want to do this forever. He could go back, and then Elon saying, I'll do it as long as I'm useful and productive. So I think there might already be some like tension starting there to be like, hey, wrap it up, go back to work, maybe. But who knows? I think he likes the limelight, and he might stick around and try and stay on it. But if he can deliver large amounts of savings this year, not even $1 trillion, let's say even he gets close to 400 billion, that is a significant move on the deficit.
So did you say 400 billion?
Mhm.
Yeah, he's not going to get 400 billion next 2 years. Do you think he will?
Yeah, I think 400 is doable.
Okay. I mean, I think they can show 400 billion on their website. It's just the website number doesn't represent what's actually been. I think it's off by like 10x.
No, I mean 400 billion. Like they could bring the deficit down to 1.6. How about that? Let's make it that way.
I mean, the deficit will decline for many reasons, but I just don't think it focuses specifically on those savings. I don't think that's going to go up to
Sure,
400 billion.
they may claim victory. You and I both know they can claim victory irrespective of why it happens. So the real question is, what do you think the deficit will be at the end of this year and at the end of the next year?
Man, that depends on so many things. I don't think we're going to see much change this year. I think next year, I don't know. I honestly don't know. If fiscal policy is not really my strength here, but I'm just focused on those savings because the other major components are obviously the interest rates. And today's what we saw today is both on the headline and the core CPI number a lower than expected number. And the 2-year yield, which is supposed to kind of predict what the Fed is going to do, etc., plunged like 10 basis points immediately. And then a few minutes later, it started rising. And it actually rose to something above before the CPI reading came out. And the same happened with the 5-year and the 10-year, etc. So despite the fact that the CPI came in lower than expected, the yields rose. And I think there's a reason for that. I think there are many reasons for that. And I think that that's going to be the theme for this year. I think people are going to continue to expect lower rates. And I think the long-term interest rates are going to stay higher than people realize. And some people say, I don't know if I agree with this, but some people say that those rates are going to continue to go higher in the second half of this year and next year. 6-7%.
I don't think we're
I
going to
hope
see
that
higher
doesn't
interest
happen.
rates. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to see higher interest rates.
But we might see around, sticking around 4.50, 4.5% for some time. And that's very problematic for Tesla and other companies in the stock market in general. Like, I don't think people realize how weak the demand is for Tesla vehicles today.
I know
It's
you have to
really
wrap up
weak.
soon, but
Mhm.
Machine's in the audience if you want to bring him up and talk macro with him.
Yeah, I sent him an invite to speak, but lately he hasn't been able to figure out his microphone. So I don't know if it's going to work.
I feel like as soon as some of his predictions didn't work, he had a lot of technical difficulty. And it's okay. It's okay, Machine. A lot of people have performance anxiety when things aren't working the way they think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Trueflation, I haven't really looked at it since. I think the way they measure things is a little off, is a little different. It's almost irrelevant.
Yeah, but I think directionally we've always discussed that, right? So that's the
I
only
think
reason.
when we talked about it in 2022, but then we kind of dropped it, I think, later on. Once it proved like it just wasn't yeah, anyway, is Machine coming up or not? Let's give him 10 seconds.
Everybody, moment of silence while Machine tries to get it up.
This has been going on for 25 hours. Thanks for joining today, man. I appreciate that. Apple is down 2%. Yeah, the only stocks are up: Tesla, Nvidia, they're driving, and a couple of the chip stocks like Broadcom, AMD, Micron, and everything else pretty much mixed. Google is so cheap these days. It's crazy. I mean, I think people are like, well, this stock is way too cheap. We should buy the stock. But I think they're kind of underestimating the disruption Google is getting from ChatGPT. I do think people are using more and more ChatGPT. And this
I
says
think Google's
Gemini.
I think Google's
Yeah.
story is always deregulation, or sorry, regulation and regulatory risk and countries getting involved. So there's always like risks.
hmm You mean antitrust stuff? I don't see
Yep.
antitrust as a big deal for shareholders, honestly. I think it might even be better for shareholders if the Google was broken up. So I don't think that's the deal. I think the real issue here is OpenAI, ChatGPT taking share from Google searches. And yes, they're incorporating AI answers to search results, but you can't have a conversation with that AI answer.
Let me ask you a
Whereas with
question. What
Mhm.
percentage of the ChatGPT conversations do you think are monetizable?
See, that doesn't matter for Google investors.
Why not? Because if you could take Google.com and you could make all the non-profitable queries go away and keep all the profitable queries, doesn't your cost improve?
So let me just explain why it doesn't matter. This is very similar to argument that Tesla investors make, which is BYD and Chinese automakers are not profitable. So let's assume, for example, BYD is actually making more money than Tesla today, but last year they weren't, right? So let's assume BYD stayed break even, or Waymo stays break even, right? That is still a problem for Tesla investors because it caps what Tesla can charge. And I think similarly, even if OpenAI stays unprofitable, ChatGPT stays unprofitable, that's still a problem for Google as long as it exists. So, are you saying that ChatGPT will cease to exist in a few years?
No, I'm not saying that.
Exactly. So it's going to continue to take share at ever so slowly from Google searches, which is where Google makes its money today. They sell ads in the search results, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to dig into this any further. I was just
Mhm.
saying, if the query volume that they're losing is the ones they actually sell ads on, that's a problem. If the ones that they're not losing, if they're only losing like people asking questions who are not actually interested in shopping, that's a different situation, right?
I
But I
mean,
hear your point. There's
but
people probably just curious about things that can sell the product.
I have personally used ChatGPT to decide on which one I'm going to buy, not
You do?
Google. Yeah, of course.
Okay,
I
then you're right.
I copy paste Amazon links and say which one's better for me. Which one is this? Compare these two products
And how do you get
instead
the
of going
Amazon link?
through. What's that?
How do you find the Amazon links?
I guess I go to Amazon.com and search for the product on their search
Do you
box.
really, or do you actually go to Google? You
I
laugh.
don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think I go to Amazon. Yeah. I mean, I'll see next time. But
Okay.
yeah, because like looking at a product on Amazon page is really cumbersome. Like you have to scroll around with reviews and scroll around to kind of like see a bunch of different things to decide whether I want to buy this or not. But with ChatGPT, it just makes it so easy.
All right, here's a question for you. Why are all the AIs using search engines in the background instead of the companies building search engines? Like
I don't know. I don't
Grok
know what
uses
that
Google
means.
search. Grok
hmm
uses Google search. ChatGPT, I'm assuming, uses Bing. I don't know for sure. Claude uses Google search. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if a human does it or a bot does it. You could eventually charge, right?
So you're saying they're still dependent on Google. They still have to pay up Google.
Search is hard. That's what I'm saying. Search is a really hard problem.
Yeah, it is really hard. I mean, even like X search sucks so much.
I don't know what you're talking about. They had an intern come in, and that guy solved the entire problem. And
Yeah.
George is perfect, and it's changed dramatically since he solved the problem.
It hasn't changed at all in the last like 10 years. It's so ridiculous.
I just thought it was hilarious when he came in. I said this on my timeline. People can go check it. As soon as he said he was going to solve the problem, I was like, "Ah, damn! Search is not going to get any better."
That's funny.
I was in a space with him. I had to be so polite, Iman, because it wasn't your space. It was someone else's space, and I didn't want to like be a dick. But they're like asking questions, and I was just like, I'm just not going to respond, because if I ask him too many questions, it will be dumb. His entire story of how comma AI will eventually get to driving. He said so many silly things. Like, one of the things he said was, nobody really wants full self-driving in the city. They just want it on highways. I'm like, that is not a real answer, because he doesn't have a solution for how to get there.
What do you think about the fact that most rideshare demand is in center cities where most people are liberal, leftist, or Democrat?
I have a strong feeling that people's buying habits and their online vocal habits are not aligned. The reason why I say that is I have yet to see strong, super liberal people really give a shit and not buy products made in China or various other things, or with slave or whatever. It's just cultish, it's fatty, and ultimately people still make the decision based on money. They'll find ways to justify it and just be like, oh, I just got the Tesla because it was quicker, it was faster, I feel safer. Because like, it's so crazy, 0.1% of Uber rides. So if you take 0.1 minus 0.0002%, that delta is some form of assault on Uber rides by Uber safety data. That is extremely high, in my opinion. If I was a woman, I wouldn't want to take those rides if there was a
I know, but you can't take Waymo.
Sure. And I think in the markets where they compete, they will compete. But at the end of the day, when you've made your mind up that you're not taking an Uber ride and you're looking at Waymo, if Waymo is double the price of Tesla, people go to Tesla. They don't care. People are.
It's not going to be double the price of Tesla. Come on. You think it's going to be double?
Tesla can afford to run the network for a lot cheaper because they don't have the cost of the capex if the cars are run by others.
I don't see. Okay, I guess this
I'll
is
say this
where
way. I
it's hold on. I think you're overestimating the importance of capex, like initial layout, on pricing later on.
Let me see if I can tell you where I got these numbers from. So, as you know, I have a bunch of Turos, right? So in the Bay Area, I have some Turos. The pricing kind of everywhere will be, let's say, maximum $100 a day. Maximum. If you're making $100 a day, that's great. So I think if you could offer $100 a day for putting your car on the network, all the Turo hosts would switch over. So everybody who has a Turo Tesla would switch over to the network. We're not even talking about the people who aren't on Turo because they want to have their own car. We're not talking about people who maybe want to have some rideshare income. We're just talking about people who are already renting their cars out. So if we just talk about that, $100 a day, do you think it's possible for a robo-taxi network to make $100 a day? Even if Tesla said, we're going to make 0% of profit on these, but it'll encourage the FSD.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think robotaxi will make $100 a day.
That's 10 rides. That's 10 rides at $10.
With today's pricing, yes, but not in the future.
Well, Waymo rides are at parity or higher than Uber today.
Today, but not in the future.
Yeah, I think that's where we disagree. I personally don't think cutting the cost of rides in half more than doubles demand for the rides.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We agree on that.
Yeah,
I think the demand stays about the same, but competition surges and everything drops down to marginal cost.
Right. At which point Tesla has the advantage.
By very little. And you're telling me that Waymo can do vision only. So in that case,
Correct.
not much.
But here's the key. They haven't gotten there yet. So this is a race, right? The most critical part of the race is the next 2 years, in my opinion.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I think the next 2 years determines the winner, in my opinion.
I don't think so. I think 2030 is determine the winner.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you should be more in agreement with me, right? Because you're basically saying if Tesla doesn't get there in 2 years, they could still win the market by 2030. That's what
I think the
saying.
game is over. But what I'm trying to say is,
so you agree?
No, but what I'm trying to say is, well, I forget what I was trying to say now.
Yeah, because you contradicted yourself so bad, your brain hurt.
Hold on a second. What I'm trying to say is, goddamn, it's out. It's gone. It's gone forever. Gone forever.
That is the biggest own I've ever had. You tripped all over.
No, I don't think so. I think I was going to say something different, but anyway.
I know. I'm just
Well,
teasing you.
let's go back to. I mean, let's go back to saying the reason why you're saying Tesla has marginal cost advantage is because Tesla it produces all vehicles, right?
No,
Go
because
ahead.
people are buying the vehicles and then putting them up. So like the fact that there are people buying the vehicles and putting it up on Turo and making money renting those cars out, that means there's enough people out there willing
Well,
to
you're making
rent
an
the car.
assumption there. Then you're making an assumption that those people will be able to share most of the revenue with Tesla, and so so in that case, I mean, Waymo is paying a margin to manufacturers, and Tesla's paying a margin to car owners, then individual car owners or fleet
Exactly. Yeah.
owners.
I'm not, again,
So
remember,
that's still about the same thing, though. Like
no, but I'm not the bull. Everybody wants to paint the bull, right? That's not my opinion. I'm not saying Tesla takes the bulk of the revenue. I'm saying all Tesla has to do is make more money than Turo makes a Turo renter and the Turo host, and the
see,
Turo
Tesla
host will
isn't
put
going
the
to do
car.
that. Tesla isn't going to do that. Tesla
Okay.
isn't going to do that
How much money
because
do you think an Uber driver makes in a day?
but that's today. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but let's just start from there.
No, there are no robotaxis. Like there's a completely different
Okay,
context.
the next
Like
question I was going to ask you is what percentage of that
today,
revenue will they
if
make?
there were 1 million robotaxis on the roads on U.S. roads today, then an Uber driver wouldn't be making half the money that it's making today.
I disagree. Like, I think let's look at it different. I'm a robotaxi provider. If I can charge you $10 for the ride and you'll take the ride, or I can charge you $5 for the ride and you'll take the ride, why would I charge you $5 unless you're going to take more than 2 rides?
The reason is because there's somebody else who will charge $5 if you don't.
Okay, so why is Coca-Cola and Pepsi not marginal to the cost of actually making the product? Why do they charge such high margins?
They taste different.
No, there's only so much demand for soda.
Mm-mm. They taste different. If Coca-Cola drinkers will drink Coca-Cola if there's 2 options, both at the same price, Pepsi drinkers will drink Pepsi in the same option. But with vehicles, that's not the same. Transportation is very much utilitarian today, and it's going to be the case for
Got
the
it.
next 5-10 years.
So you think if Coca-Cola was half the price, if you went to a store and Coca-Cola was half the price and Pepsi was like Coca-Cola's 50 cents, Pepsi's $1, and you're a Pepsi drinker, you think 0% of those Pepsi drinkers switch over to Coca-Cola in that moment?
Well, in that sense, I don't agree with your assumption because I don't think Tesla Roadtaxi will be half the price of a Waymo. I think the difference is going to be more like 50 cents, 51 cents, or 55 cents.
Oh no.
And by the way, who's cheaper is TBD.
Okay, but again, this comes down to Tesla can make the money by selling the vehicle and selling FSD on the vehicle. They don't have to make the money on the ride.
Yeah, but
Therefore,
then Tesla doesn't collect the entire 50 cents, whereas Waymo's collect the entire 55 cents.
yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the market, not the profitability at the moment. I'm saying Tesla can dominate the market.
I'm always talking about the profitability.
Yeah, but hold up. If just like we talked about, like with Uber and all these other things, Uber captured the market by subsidizing the market for a very long time. Tesla can do that, continue to make the money on selling the vehicles and selling the FSD, dominate the market,
Yeah,
drive out
but
competition, and then take a cut.
Uber drive out Lyft. Tesla is trying to drive out Google.
Uber
two
drove
companies are
out
different.
taxis, not Lyft. Taxis.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they weren't very profitable either. Like, do you think taxi cab drivers were rolling in money the way Google is?
No, but they had to change habits. They had to get people to download an app and order a taxi via an app, not call a phone, not walk outside and hail. You know how convenient it is in major cities to just walk out, put your hand out, and somebody takes you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they had a big uphill battle to get people to like wait for their car to come. Like in New York City, that's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they didn't drive out taxis in New York City.
Yeah. They eventually got there though, right?
I don't know. I think taxis are still a big deal.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
I think the price difference between Waymo and Tesla FSD isn't going to be very high. I think that Waymo could actually drive out Tesla. I think that's the more like a scenario TBD. To be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm on the same page. It's going to be a race. I think these are the two contenders, and Zoox
Even
is the
when
third.
Tesla gets there, let's say Tesla got to Waymo scale in a few years. Even then, I don't think Tesla's going to be able to make any material money on robotaxis. I think that game is over. I think that if Tesla had indeed done 1 million robotaxis by 2020, then Tesla would have dominated and it would have been worthwhile. I think that game is that train has left the station.
I'd love to run the numbers with you, but I feel like your decision's made up.
No, we can run the numbers if you want. But
Okay.
Waymo is already in half a dozen cities. They're going to a dozen cities. They're improving the the vehicles. They're signing up more manufacturers, and those manufacturers are going to compete among each other. So they're going to drive the input cost into Waymo even further. Tesla, like you said, I agree with you. Waymo will eventually do vision only. So where is the cost advantage? I mean, Tesla today isn't even the lowest cost manufacturer of EVs anymore.
The vertical alignment and this is where I think the core is going to come down to. America, in my opinion, is never going to allow the entire automotive market in the United States to get dominated by a Chinese manufacturer. Therefore, they will always have high tariffs on Chinese vehicles. So a Chinese manufacturer is never going to become the dominant manufacturer of taxis in America. And just owning the autonomy market in the United States is good enough for the business to justify the valuations I was talking about.
Prepare to be surprised. You're going to lose money on the shares you're buying today. I almost guarantee it. And you're going to be sorry that you didn't listen to me. And here's the thing. I think that Tesla has a pathway to actually winning the robotaxi game. Okay. There's only one way it can happen. And it's definitely not going to happen in the next decade. And it can only happen if Elon is super focused. For maybe not in the next couple of years, but after Doge ends, Elon goes back to Tesla and super focused. Then I think in 2030s, Tesla can leap beyond Waymo in one specific way, and I'm not going to say what it is.
Okay, that's quite the cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to end the space there. It's been going on for 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes. And we'll get back to this after I cover my short. How about that?
Okay, fair. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll chat with you all next time.
I'm probably
Yeah,
gonna
go
hold by the time you cover your shorts, so I won't lose money, and you were wrong. Anyway,
It's not going to happen for the next 10 years. It's just not.
I don't have to sell in the next 10 years. I'll be fine.
Okay. All right, great. And but like I said, it's a very low probability, and everything has to go right. So you're willing to take that risk too. Then.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, frankly, I made a good amount of money selling shares and buying back the same number of shares. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. But you're assuming the shares won't go down in price further.
No, I'm assuming the shares can continue to exist, and I can continue to sell options against them if I have to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Do you think Elon will ever get back to Tesla and just focus 100% on Tesla?
I think he did yesterday.
What? What gives you that idea? Because he sold a
finally
couple
did
of Teslas.
advertising, and he figured out how to do it for free.
He's been doing it for free. Trump,
Not at that scale. That was better than the Super Bowl. He got more eyeballs than I think the Super Bowl ads do.
You have zero evidence of that.
I don't. I'm going to argue Trump gets more eyeballs than the Super Bowl. I'm okay with that.
And eyeballs don't equal profits to the bottom line.
We will see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
by the
how
way,
about this? I think in the next, before the end of this year, if the attacks on Tesla continue, I think we see a trend of people continuing to post when they're buying a Tesla. I see a trend of every Republican person running for Congress or whatever bragging about it at some point, talking about it. I think it becomes a narrative and a story. And I think people who are positive about buying something make a bigger impact than the people who are not going to buy it anyway and are just talking out of their mouth.
I think you're out of your fucking mind. How about that? No,
Okay.
I think the Republicans will. I think there's going to be an increasing number of Republicans who buy the car, but starting off at an extremely low base. I mean, most Republicans haven't even considered Tesla, and it's not going to happen over the next year. Maybe in the future, if Trump kind of keeps up his infomercials every month, maybe we have a Tesla event in front of the White House.
Sean
And I
Hannity
think,
talks about
yeah,
it
yeah,
on his thing. Joe Rogan starts talking about it again. Yeah, it could happen.
Joe Rogan has been talking about it the entire time. So yeah, if all this Alex Jones, maybe talks about vaccines, and then after that talks about, Teslas for every month for the next 3 years, then maybe you might see some material difference. But the idea that Elon went back to Tesla yesterday is wild. Wild.
Yeah, it was just as bad as Biden in the Jeeps at the White House. It's not wild. The precedent was set by the previous president.
Yeah, and it didn't result on anything when Biden did it. It's not going to do anything when Trump
What are you
does
talking
it.
about? EVs were great. Mary Barra led. Everything was perfect after that summit.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, bye.
All right, sounds good. Let's call it a day. Take care, and I'll chat with you all next time, everybody.